What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 59 of the Finale podcast. Today I'm joined by Yossef, back with the new NFL season. Saw him in preseason. Now we're ready for the regular season picks. So, Yossef, what you looking forward to for this NFL season? We just saw week one. So, what are you most excited about coming into week two?
Man, I think I talked a little bit about this during our preseason game, our show. I was super excited to see the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, see how that went down, and we all know what happened on Monday night. So a little sad about that. Looking forward to seeing the Dallas Cowboys play, though. They look like a great team going into it. Minnesota Vikings fan, so looking to see how we bounce back from that first loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So yeah, I'm just excited for football overall. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. We'll talk about that Rodgers injury a little bit later, but starting off, just wanted to get your surprises and disappointments from week one. So starting off with the surprises.
Surprises, I'm going to do one that hits a little bit close to home.
Okay.
I was talking a little bit of trash about this team in our preseason game, in our preseason pod. And what I was really saying was that I just didn't see where their firepower would come from. I didn't see the identity of the team. The team I'm referring to is the Green Bay Packers, the ones that got lucky with Brett Favre and then another time with Aaron Rodgers. And it seems like they've done something like that with Jordan Love. The team looked completely well-rounded. They're playing great complementary ball. Their defense is just as dominant as it was last year, with the added benefit of like a new stress-free offense where they don't have to focus on throwing the ball, and that's allowed Jordan Love to be more of a game manager. He's rushing the ball. The Packers are rushing the ball amazingly. They have multiple backs that they can give to. Aaron Jones had a heck of a game, but even if it's not Aaron Jones, they got AJ Dillon. If it's not AJ Dillon, they have two backs behind him that are super effective. So ultimately, the Packers surprised me. I think they're a team that the NFC North has to watch for. They have a potential to win the NFC North, and it's all on their defense and their complementary ball. Floor has coaching them boys up really well. Dobbs is looking nice, as well as Christian Watson hasn't even played yet, so he's going to come in, and I think he's going to be a great fit. So I'm a genuine Packers hater, but I can't hate on what they did on week one. Great performance overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Packers are definitely surprised, especially in the way they dominated that game. Like, I know the expectations weren't the highest for the Bears, but coming into a new season, you bring in DJ Moore, another year of Justin Fields. You're hoping he becomes a better, passing quarterback as well. There was some, excitement surrounding that organization, but just the way they dominated him on both sides. Aaron Jones, 2 touchdowns. Jordan Love looking comfortable, throwing for over 240 yards. I mean, it was just a good, and like you said, without Christian Watson, it was just a good performance. Romeo Dobbs, AJ Dillon, they came to play in the defense, especially, like, just held their own. Kenny Clark, Jair, like, it was a good performance all around. So I think the Packers are definitely a team to watch out for. I put them in my NFC playoff picks for a reason. I saw them and I'm like, okay, I think there's a legitimate shot for 3 NFC North teams to make the playoffs. And I think the Packers are no joke. They could honestly even win the division, like you said, just because of their experience. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't even seem like Jordan Love is like a rookie. Like, it seems like he's been built up for this moment the past few seasons under Aaron Rodgers and LaFleur. So it just seemed like a seamless transition. So I like the direction that they're heading in. It doesn't seem like there's going to be too many bumps along the road. But Aaron Jones did get a little, hamstring injury. So we'll see what happens with that. I think, obviously, he's a big part of what they do. So definitely. My surprise is I have 2.
Actually, before we get into your surprise, I want to dive in a little bit more with the Packers surprise.
For sure.
I want to ask you how much of that game was the Packers dominating versus the Bears disappointing?
I mean, I feel like the Packers had a good game plan, I think they knew Justin Fields was going to run, and he did run. But they made it difficult for him to pass as well. Like, Jair was, like he said, he kept it quiet for DJ Moore. It really seemed like it didn't pick up until the second half, and at that point, the game was already over. So Darnell Mooney maybe got some gains. Komet maybe got some gains. Maybe it looked good on the box score, but really, from
Mhm.
start to finish, when the game was actually competitive and within reach for both teams, the Packers dominated on both sides of the ball. So I think it was a mix for sure, but more so the Packers on defense, because look at last year. I mean, Justin Fields, 1,000-yard rusher. That's how they would actually like be in games, was with his legs. So I think they did a good job of kind of game planning for, sometimes maybe he is going to get a little 8-yard gain or whatever, but just don't allow the big play, don't allow the big gain, and
Right.
that's what he did a good job of.
Definitely an example of uh, division rivals playing against each other, knowing each other's tendencies and what they want to do. I think the Bears, we gave them a little bit too much credit for their offseason. They still can't stop running game for their lives. Neither can they really put up points. So it's imperative that they have a better defense. The Bears don't look more than like a 4-5 win team to me. So I don't know if they improved much. I think people were talking about they were really going to compete in the North. I think we can put that aside when you can, this is not happening this year, and they might be. This might be indicative on Justin Fields. We'll see. They've given him all of the pieces. The running game is decent. They have two decent bags. So we'll see what the Bears do to it. But I was kind of surprised by I was underwhelmed, I should say, by their lack of ability to produce at all on offense when it really mattered the most.
Yeah, and I feel like you could put some of it on the coaching staff as well, because it feels like they're still trying to feature Justin Fields as like their lead rusher. And I think that formula only gets you so far. It looks like he was their leading rusher on Sunday. So I don't think that's the formula you want to go into the season with. I was hoping that they would go into the offseason kind of getting that next level out of Justin Fields. He had a lot of hype in the offseason. People are expecting a big year for him, but we can't have another year of just 1,000-yard rushing and just all these losses, because that's easy to game plan for, and that doesn't get there's no point of basically making that DJ Moore trade, because the
Right.
whole point of bringing him in is to maximize Fields and his timestamp with this organization, and just running and stuff like that. It's not going to get you wins, and ultimately it could cost jobs. Eberflus, came in as a defensive minded guy in Indianapolis, came in as the head coach, and that defense hasn't been that great. One of the first few things he did was get rid of Khalil Mack and Roquan Smith, and now their defense is completely new. They come into the season with their headline signing Tremaine Edmonds from Buffalo.
Mhm.
Obviously was a statement signing. They had some money to spend, and they got him. So I like that signing, but it just seems like their defense hasn't really figured it out. And to allow over 30 points, let me confirm what it was, 38 points to the Packers, a team that's under their own transition with Jordan Love. I mean, I feel like that's a disappointing start to the season, and could soon lead to, like I said, Eberflus potentially being under fire with his job security.
Right. Yeah, I think you hit it right there on the nail. If this coaching staff is going to continue to do what they did last year, I don't think that they'll have much success. So it's imperative on them to take takeaways from game one, make the proper adjustments going into week two, and if they don't, this could be a lingering issue.
Definitely, definitely.
Hmm.
For me though, two surprises I got. Starting off, I got the Rams. Rams, first of all, start the season with the news that you got Cooper Kupp on IR, missing 4 games, which is a blow, of course. And, the offseason, losing Jalen Ramsey, Bobby Wagner, there's some things that happened to them under these last 12 months, past year, that's, coming from Super Bowl champions to just a crazy decline. And now they're,
Hmm.
start the season with that win. I think that just sets the tone. It sets the tone for everybody across the organization. Matthew Stafford had a great game. Puka Nakua is his name.
Fifth round,
Bro,
beautiful.
he came to play.
Yeah.
He had a great game. I think additionally, I believe it was Tutu Atwell who had another 100-yard plus receiving game. You have
Hmm.
2 touchdowns out of your running back. I think it was just a complete dominating performance, and like, it was against a team that a lot of people picked for their playoffs in the Seahawks. The Seahawks, they were doubters, especially from my end. I guess that's why I didn't put them in the playoffs, as if they
Yeah.
can replicate their success from last year, especially with Geno Smith at the helm, him getting that contract. Was he a one-season wonder? Can we see additional success with this core. And so far, it's not off to a good start. NFC West was supposed to be the Seahawks and the 49ers, just them two competing. Cardinals weren't supposed to be anything special. Rams weren't supposed to be anything special. But, you have Cooper Kupp on IR, and then you got these receivers balling out. You got the run game going. You got Matthew Stafford going. You got the defense going. You got Aaron Donald looks like the Aaron Donald that we know again.
Did you see that? Did you see that one clip when Geno Smith's mic'd up and he said,
"Oh God" or something like that? Yeah. Bro, that's the fear that Aaron Donald instills in other quarterbacks. So we need more of that. We don't need any of this post Super Bowl when they're talking about retiring or whatever. We need you on the at your best, keeping that hunger. So I like what I saw from the Rams, and I'm so much more like if I had a power rankings, I'd like shoot them up like 10 or 15 spots just because of that performance. They're looking like a legit competitor, a legit contender for playoffs this year. Week one though, but surprise for me for sure.
I actually had that noted as well. I'm glad you brought it up. It didn't fall in like one of my top two, so I just didn't mention it. But ultimately, it's definitely something that needs to be shed light on. I think you said it best. It sets the tone for the season. And if they had come out here and got blown out, vice versa, it would have set the tone as well. So this is a big, big deal for them. I think this changes their, even internally, everyone in the building is now moving from, oh, maybe this is just a throwaway wash here with Cooper Kupp coming in injured to don't wait until we get Cooper Kupp back. We're demons. So I love that team. I love it right now. I'm excited to see what goes on. And they have two backs. I mean, Cam Akers got a lot of attempts and wasn't really efficient with it, but they have another guy like Kyren Williams, I think is his name.
Yep.
They just keep him coming. And Sean McVay, just an amazing coaching job. I think this is why he deserves to be named as one of the best head coaches when we talk about best head coaches year in and year out.
Do you have any concerns at this point with the Seahawks just based off that start?
I do. I did pick them to be the 7th seed in the playoffs this year. So that with my mindset there was they can keep some of that magic from last year. Their defense got a little bit better. They have an improved wide receiver. They brought in wide receiver help, I should say, with Tyler Lockett getting a little bit older. And still with that, Geno Smith just looked a little off. He didn't look like he had it. You know what I'm saying? That he had last year, avoiding the pass rush, being able to find that open man, making his progressions through. He just looked a little overwhelmed, and that's something that I just really didn't expect from him. The game got out of hand for them late. It wasn't like it was wrapped up early. So I feel like he had multiple attempts at being able to turn the game around, and he was just never able to. I guess you could credit, the defensive line for the Rams for continuously applying pressure, but this is a division rival. This is someone that you guys have to come in prepared in. Maybe they took the Rams a little too lightly, but I'm a bit concerned. This defense putting up 30 points might be my biggest point of concern. I thought this defense was going to be the ultimate package, the ultimate unit for this team. Ultimately, like they're the ones that they would be reliant on, and them allowing 30 points does speak a little bit on the lack of offensive progression that they were able to make in that game, but it's still 30 points. So definitely a little bit concerned. Defense was the thing I was banking on with Seattle, and that looks a little sketch. We'll see if they can turn things around and get their running game back in play and see if they can start using that rookie wide receiver, JSN, and all of their other pieces because they have pieces. So we'll see if they can figure it out. I'm not completely out on them by any means, but I'm a little worried by their game one performance.
Yeah, and I'm remembering just now that the last week of the regular season last year, the Seahawks had to beat the Rams to have a chance at the playoffs, and that game went to OT. A lot of people thought the Seahawks would comfortably win that game based on how the season was going for the Rams, but it was the other way around. It went to OT. They won that game by a field goal, and then it went to the night game when the Lions had to beat the Packers. Like it was just. People forget about that. I feel like the way you end the season dictates also how you go into the next season. They probably went into the next season, the Rams they probably went into the next season like, okay, we can play with these guys at our best. And even without Cooper Kupp, like we can really, if we're at our best, dominate these guys. So I think personnel-wise, the Rams will be just fine until Cooper Kupp comes back. And when he does come back, it's going to be a really good offense, efficient offense. And if McVay is, calling the plays like he is right now and Stafford's looking comfortable, and stays healthy, which is a big thing, then I think it could be a good year, underrated type of year for the Rams. In their upwards rise back to the top of that division. So
Right.
I have to see how it goes, but they're one of my surprises. Should I give my other one?
Huge game for division like playoff implications. I know it's early in the season, but week one loss. Was it at home? Let me check.
Seahawks were at home.
The Seahawks were at home. Like that's unbearable. So go ahead. Yeah, you can go ahead and give your second take.
Okay. My second pick is the Browns. I mean,
That was waiting for you to say it because we were talking about it last time, and I have it as mine. But go ahead, take the floor.
yeah, the Browns. I mean, like that performance against the Bengals, it seems like Deshaun Watson is back, in my opinion. Just based off that performance, I liked everything that I saw.
Yeah.
I like Chubb. I like just the comfort of like the whole unit of that team. Like the defense played really well. It was just lights out for Joe Burrow that whole game. It was just not him coming off, getting the highest paid contract for I think quarterback ever. It was tough. So I think that's just a great start to the season. It's a sign of things to come. And yeah, just to speak on it, I mean they're my surprise.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. This was so you hit on my number one surprise were the Packers. Number two were the Browns, and number three were the Rams. So you hit on both of those 2 points. I'm glad you brought up the Browns though, because now I get to really dive in. Just what I was watching, I was focused. That was one of the games I was really focusing on because I thought it would be more of a shootout. I was interested to see how some of my fantasy players did, but ultimately it turned into a bloodbath the first half. And the weather wasn't the best, but this is what to be expected. It's nothing new. It's nothing that you can use as an excuse by any chance, by any means. But what I saw was a sheer domination of the defensive line dominating the offensive line of Cincinnati. Cincinnati couldn't get any run game going. They couldn't pass protect. They couldn't hold back Myles Garrett and the crew for about 5 blinks before it was already all up on just Joe Burrow. So for me, to see the Browns dive into their identity on defense, hand the ball off to Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb's running hard and as healthy as we possibly could have imagined him being. And then Deshaun Watson, I do have a little reservation still about him. I don't think that he, just by his game one performance, that he's living up to the contract quite yet. And I say that because while his rushing game looks like it's back, he's scrambling out of the pocket really nicely. He's able to extend the play a little bit longer, even get that rushing touchdown. But my biggest issue with Deshaun Watson was his throwing. His passing attack is still not what it was, pre that whole situation in Houston. I'm talking 2019, 2020 season before the COVID lockout. He was rivaling Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes for one of the best quarterbacks ever, or at the time. So I'm not seeing that passing ability from him. I saw a lot of balls being thrown at receivers' feet and into the ground, which is something that I would like to see cleared up. I saw a lot of that last year as well. So I'm wondering what it is outside of a full training camp that he needs. Maybe it's just reps. And he did all the other things. He's still evading the pocket, protecting the ball, doing all of that, doing the reads before the ball snapped. He's doing all of those things really well. It's just the throwing of the ball is still not at the point where I would like it to be. However, it's a long season, and I'll give him some grace, and hopefully he'll get better at that. And if he does, that will truly unlock this team. If they're able to use Amari Cooper, who was relatively, insignificant that game, if you can up his production, this game is a wrap before the second quarter even begins. So that's just a one little tidbit that I was nitpicking on the Browns. But overall, they're playing great complementary ball. I'm huge on complementary ball. There's no way that your defense is that good and you're a passing team. That doesn't work in the NFL. You need to play complementary, play to your strengths. And their defense is a strength of theirs. Their running game is a strength of theirs. Quarterback is nice to have as a facilitator, but he can really put you over the top. So the Browns are looking legitimate contenders in their division to win that title. Like I said about Joe Burrow and the Browns, they're not and the Bengals, I don't think they're as locked as everybody thought they were coming into the season. I still think they're going to have a great season. They'll bounce back, 10 win team potentially. But what I need to see is a more diversified attack on offense, and their O-line needs to just be better. They're paying those guys a lot of money. I think they're one of the top 5 most paid units. So underperforming like that is unacceptable.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And it's for a reason too, because I mean that's been the biggest concern with this era of the Bengals is the pass protection for Burrow.
Hmm.
So it is right that they're investing in the offensive line, but yeah, it does need to get better. They went up against obviously Myles Garrett. That defensive line honestly is like front seven is a really good front seven. So I think that's my biggest concern coming into the season for the Bengals was just I had them at the 3 seed because I feel like they'd struggle in the divisional game. That's one of the best divisions in football.
Right.
AFC North, they could lose, maybe 3 games, maybe 4 games. They could lose to each of those teams in the division because, I mean, the Browns probably saw it as like the weakest team in that division, but the Browns handled them. The Steelers, obviously, tough opening game against the 49ers, but the Steelers could, come into Cincinnati or at home and beat the Bengals too. And the Ravens, of course, are Lamar Jackson's back, so that anything's possible with them. So it's like obviously J.K. Dobbins, man, that sucks. But to my original point, it's just like it's a tough division. The Bengals are gonna obviously have to come prepared, and when you got guys like got Jamar Chase talking before the game, I kind of saw the writing on the wall that this wasn't going to go well because whenever these two teams kind of face each other, there's a little bit of chatter going on.
Right.
Jamar Chase is definitely involved in all that. So I kind of knew at home, okay, the Browns weren't talking too much. It seemed like they were only responding. So it just seemed like the writing was on the wall for the Browns to kind of handle this game. I didn't expect under 100 yards passing for Joe Burrow. Just he was under. It seemed like deja vu of like 2 years ago when he like was getting sacked that game against the Titans. It just seemed like he had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So I think no reason to panic though. I don't think they started the best last year. They started like 2-2. So there's no reason to panic, but the performance was nowhere near their top level on Sunday. That's for sure.
Yeah, it gives me concerns. I don't know about you, but it does give me concerns in a division that's that good. You can't really underestimate your divisional rivals, and I think they did that this week. They have to improve on that. They have to be more mentally tough. I think Joe Burrow needs to be a little bit of a better leader on that front. So as well as Jamar Chase, Jamar Chase is also has a huge imprint on that team, and he's just going ahead. And I don't want to emphasize it too much, but it is an issue. You need to respect your opponents and go out there and grind. Knowing that the NFL has a squad of 32 against you that is completely hungry and willing to do anything to win. So
Yeah.
I think the Bengals are lacking the chip on their shoulder. They seem to be the homeboy favorites, and they just kind of like are riding that love without really like getting. They need that chip on their shoulder. That's when teams play the best. They're the most focused, they're the most dialed in, and they come in the most prepared. The Bengals seem like everyone's already given them so much praise, but they need to really earn that for me. So hopefully they go ahead and take care of business next week, but they do have the Ravens, so good luck.
Yeah, I mean they suffered from that earlier on last season with a little bit of a Super Bowl, slump starting off the season, but I mean they figured it out going to the AFC Championship. So I think this is a team that kind of capitalizes off of momentum, and when they get into their groove, I think that's when they're becoming the most dangerous. Like this division is, in my opinion, the best in the North, like I said, but I mean the best in the league. But I think what separates the Bengals is their peak levels is way higher than any other team in the AFC North, in my opinion, right now.
Okay.
Even though the Browns had a really good performance, but I think that is one of the best games the Browns can play. Deshaun Watson, obviously, he has levels to reach his peak levels, but this is way better version of Deshaun that we saw last year, and that's a testament just to his preparedness for this moment, getting a training camp. So I think it's a good start to get that division win, but the Bengals shouldn't panic because they have the writing on the wall that they know the winning formula. They just need to lock in and key in on those ideas. They don't want to start 2-2 every year and kind of fight their way back up, chip on their shoulder like you were kind of alluding to. But I think the most important thing is just to stay locked in. Part of their identity is to kind of have this trash talking. They love this trash talking stuff. They talk with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
They're talking about Burrow being the best quarterback in the league and everything. They know what they're doing with that. So I think it's just this is part of their identity. So if they're going to talk, they can. I mean, they can do what they got to do to kind of fuel their fire,
Mhm.
but they got to stay locked in at the same time because teams are coming for them as well, recognizing that they're an
Right,
essential team in the AFC and in
right.
the yeah.
I think that you're right on right there. There's something about it where like they're still bringing their underdog mentality and talking their stuff, but ultimately they are favorites. They're not the hunting anymore. They are the hunted. So it's like that dynamic needs to shift. You kind of I feel that's kind of what I was alluding to when I was talking about like the leadership like of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase has to take another step. You guys aren't the chase. You're not the ones chasing anymore. You guys are the ones being chased. And at that point, like how you have to change up your leadership style. And I
Mm.
don't know. Like you said, it's working for them now, but maybe this is signs that it's not working. That this is signs that we need to pick another like strategy. How about talk about hard work and commitment and putting in the work and be that let that be your culture. But I think we're getting a little bit into the speculation things, but ultimately leadership is something that they need to get better at, and I think that's what was evident about the Cleveland game.
Yeah, and last thing on that is like they're a young team, so it's like their head coach is young. They're just a young organization led by young talent, and luckily their talent is so good that they're going to Super Bowls, AFC championships. So I mean that's obviously good for their future. But when you don't have like that guy to kind of look to and keep everybody steady, that's where the problems kind of arise. So I mean, so far they've been able to figure it out in years past whenever they have dealt with adversity. But I think there will have to come a time, like you're saying, that they kind of have to change their MO a little bit.
Right. Spot on. I think you're right on. I still don't think that. I think my prediction coming into it was that they would lose the division to Baltimore. I think that was a little bit backed up by this week, but I don't want to do a victory lap early because this is not the end all be all. And I think the Bengals, like you said, are a rallying team. They're like they say usually basketball is a game of runs. Similar to that, like the Bengals seem like they get that momentum, they ride it, and then they ride it out too. So we'll see if they can't turn this around.
Yeah. Disappointments. Do you have any disappointments?
Disappointments. I have two. I threw in the Seahawks. We already talked about them, so we don't need to really dive in. But I have two. I have two disappointments. I could start one place. I could start another place.
Just get it out the way. We know.
All right. The Giants on prime time getting shellacked by the by the Dallas Cowboys. I think for me personally, I was expecting a better game than that. But I was just in sheer joy watching the Giants get trampled on. And they didn't even score any points, which is just like embarrassing. But ultimately, like without getting too personal about all of this, just to get into the X's and O's, wow, the Dallas Cowboys have a dominant defense, and that's what's showcased on Sunday Night Football. I think what we can talk about is if we want to talk about the disappointment of the Giants, if we want to dive into what caused this, it really has to do with two things. One and first and foremost is their own line was just not productive. They're paying these guys. There's some first round talents in there. This was pitiful. This is not a performance. I haven't seen a performance like this from their O line, and I believe they brought back all five of their O linemen from last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. So they have a level of consistency that they're bringing in from last year. And last year, I did not see their their offensive line fold this quickly to anyone, let alone a division rival. Excuse me. So, first of all, it was the offensive line that failed. Second of all, their defense was the number one thing that they were hanging their hats on last year, and this year it did not come to play. There was holes everywhere. The Cowboys were able to get the ball out quick, not rely on Dak holding and reading defenses, but quick passes and feeding the ball to Tony Pollard and letting him run. I think that game plan was a really good game plan, and I think that's a game plan that Dallas will continue to dive into because they know they don't want Dak throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game. So I think overall, from that point of view, it was really good. But another disappointing piece of it was Daniel Jones turning over the ball 3+ times is just Danny Dimes of old. That's not who he was under who he is under Brian Dable. And I think I'm gonna say that he'll get better at this over the course of the season. I don't think this is like him going back to his old ways or anything, but it's just it showcases the fact that even a running quarterback like Danny Dimes, whose biggest attribute is his ability to create outside of the pocket and by himself sometime and by receivers sometime, he wasn't able to do that because the pass rush was so just all consuming that he didn't know what to do. I think it showed that he Daniel Jones has a lack of poise that he needs to still build up, but also a lack of skill with his ability to throw the ball. I think he was looking to get out of the pocket and escape a little bit too quickly, and I know that is because of that distress that he feels as that quarterback sitting in the pocket. You can't just feel that distress and not want to do something, especially when you're able to do something like Daniel Jones. But it could really help him if he just stayed in the pocket for an extra second, split second, and just deliver that ball and take the hit. And it's just his first instinct was to get out of that pocket, and I get it because it was crumbling every play. But it's just it showed a lot of deficiencies from Daniel Jones and his inability to make something happen. And even with his legs, when the O-line wasn't producing, that's why we talk up quarterbacks that have a running style or a scrambling style of offenses, because even when the O-line is bad, those kind of quarterbacks can bail you out. Daniel Jones did nothing of that sort. Instead, he folded and he turned the ball over multiple times in that pressure. That's something that needs to change if the Giants are willing to turn around their season.
Yeah, I mean, this game was over very early on. It just, when you start the game like that, it's just very hard to come back from. I feel like it could have gone different if it didn't start in that manner. You block field goal,
Right.
Saquon Barkley kind of little, he gets popped and it's an interception, but he isn't able to hold onto the ball after a catch. So, I mean, from start to finish, this is just pure dominance on both sides of the ball. It's kind of shades of Dallas versus Minnesota last year. And I'm not going to lie, there parts of me were like, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but parts of me were kind of fooled by the Giants' performance in the playoffs last year against Minnesota, to think that they're able to like be poised in these big moments and kind of capitalize off of the progress they made last year in the first year with Dayball.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like, yeah, like you said, kind of feels like 10 steps back. I mean, I say it's 10 steps backward. As I remember saying that to one of my friends, like, this feels like 10 steps backwards for the Giants after everything they built last year.
Right.
So it's a terrible start, especially against a divisional team that, isn't even the best team in your division if you talk about the Super Bowl, representative of the NFC with the Eagles. So, the Giants are going to have to get back from this quickly, turn their heads to this upcoming week, and, prove to themselves that, last week was just an anomaly. It's not going to happen again, and that they're better than what they put out there.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Daboll said in the press conference that he never questioned their motivation, their effort for that game, and I saw it early on that they had juice for that game, but it just seemed like the life was taken out of them early with those killer plays, those plays that just like take the air out of you. And as a Vikings fan, I've seen that before with the Vikings, just like early doors is just shut. But this is the potential of this Cowboys team to kind of dominate teams. So that's what I was thinking. Like, when you look at the NFC landscape, are the Cowboys Super Bowl contenders? That's my question.
Before we dive into that, let me touch a little bit more on the Giants, where I have an issue with, like, I think what you said was really, really a good point, because that's something that I think the organization was also fooled by. That game against the Vikings in that first round series last year, let's not take it out of context, but the Vikings were a 30th ranked defense going into that game. And Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley was able to cut up that defense. But I think we looked at it too much, just because the Vikings were a playoff team. They're like, look how they handled the playoff team, 13 wins, da da da. Ultimately, what they were able to do was they were able to carve up a defense that was 30th ranked and barely stop an offense that was, a good, powerful offense, but not, elite cream of the crop, but definitely like top 10 offense going into last year's playoffs. And I think that game might have just altered reality a little bit in the minds of the GM as in the overall the front office over there, because what they did in the offseason, going ahead and giving Daniel Jones $50 million, signing Darren Waller to a decent deal and bringing him in, are there roster construction problems here? Is that what we're seeing? Why? I mean, Waller being your number one receiver is definitely an issue. None of the other wide receivers were able to create separation quick enough for Daniel Jones to get the ball out. So, like, I'm looking at this team and I'm like, was that investment, $40 million investment a year into Daniel Jones, could that money have been spent better elsewhere? On the across the board, defensively and offensively, and maybe could you have gotten a decent discount on that 40 mil contract? Could you have gotten away with paying him 28 mil? I don't know.
I mean, I feel like after last year, you kind of had to pay him because of what he did in the contract year. I mean, just the connection that him and Dayball kind of developed over the course of last season and just gotten stronger over the end of the season. And you kind of saw that they had enough in them to win a playoff game because they're playing the Vikings. They just played the Vikings a couple weeks before, and they show that, it took a 60-yard field goal to lose that game. It seemed like everything that was building up to last season it seemed like, okay, Daniel Jones is probably going to get paid because of everything he did that year. It's kind of like, the Vikings had a similar sort of thing. They went to the NFC Championship. It's a little bit different, but we didn't keep our quarterback after the NFC Championship. They go to the playoffs, second round, first playoff appearance probably since 2016, and it's like, okay, we need to hold on to this guy because this is the guy that got us to the playoffs. As much as we rely on Saquon Barkley, because our receiver talent isn't the best, like we got Daniel Jones, we finally have the quarterback of our future that we want. So it just seemed like it'd be hard to not retain him. Like, who else were you going to get after that? Like maybe Derek Carr, but still at that, it's just like you're building something with Dayball. Might as well continue building that relationship with Dayball and Jones.
Yeah.
So I see why they did it, but you're seeing it now that it's kind of like, okay, there are certain limitations to Daniel Jones that still are in his game and still can restrict the Giants from taking that next step. Because you saw what happened the next week after that playoff win. The Eagles just had the perfect game plan. They did what the Vikings should have done and just contain Daniel Jones. QB contain, make him be a passer. If he's not going to be a passer, let him have these little 5-yard, 3-yard games. You're not gonna win on the shoulders of Saquon Barkley in the playoffs. So you need a complete kind of performance, and that's the thing that the Giants are unable to kind of do at this point. Successful last year for sure with Dayball. And it wasn't like Daniel Jones was purely a runner last year. It's not like he was on some Justin Fields type of stuff. He obviously progressed as a passer, and credit to him, of course, not just Brian Dayball. But there are still some limitations, still some things that kind of have you, scratching your head over that contract that you gave him. But I see why they paid him. It's just they're going to have to figure it out quickly because, and this is not just on Daniel Jones. It's a defensive issue that
for sure.
You can't just come out there and allow your team to get 40 balls on opening night at home. It's unacceptable performance. I'm sure that they'll acknowledge that. Wink Martindale, he's coached some really good defenses, so this is probably something that he's going to harp on this week. So I'm excited to see how they respond, because I don't want that to be the lasting identity. And this is a credit to the Cowboys for sure, but just as a Giants perspective, I mean, you gotta go back to the drawing board and see what went wrong, because it's an unacceptable performance to even allow that to happen on your home field.
On your home field, and we're talking about division rivals, playoff race, another division that looks to have 3 teams in the playoffs. This is not a good start for that third team to try to get in the playoffs. And ultimately, their defensive line was, I think, the most underperforming unit here. Outside of the offensive line, their defensive line also took a big hit. They weren't able to generate any pressures, make anyone really work for anything. What's that?
No turnovers for Dak. Well, right. For sure.
I mean, there was no need to hand off the ball, and Tony Pollard was able to get his Dougie doing his Turpin. The backup running back was getting his. overall, it was just they didn't make the offensive for the Dallas Cowboys work at all, and it showed. And they can't allow this to continue. But I think your question was, can Dallas is Dallas a Super Bowl contender? I think without a doubt they are. I still have limitation. I still have my hesitations on Dak Prescott and him being able to beat any AFC quarterback that comes out, whether it be Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I don't think he can beat any of those guys, frankly. So my issue is with the quarterback, but outside of that, I do think they're Super Bowl contender. I do think they're Super Bowl contender just for the fact that it's really between them, the 49ers, and the Eagles in the NFC. And I can see them going head to head with all three of those teams just because I don't see a quarterback that's like that much above. And we talked about Jalen Hurts last time. I still think Jalen Hurts is not that type of quarterback who can really slice you and dice you and really like make that him versus Dak. I don't think it's a glaring difference like it is with the AFC guys. And ultimately, my issue with the Cowboys is their quarterback and Dak Prescott, but I do think that ultimately they have a Super Bowl contender. They have a Super Bowl contending roster, and I believe that it will contend for a Super Bowl. Definitely a berth. I think they're definitely like, I would say, I wouldn't say a favorite to make it to the Super Bowl, but definitely like a favorite to make it into the NFC Championship game, or they should be.
So, looking at these defenses of the 49ers and the Eagles, like, do you think Dak will be able to come to play in those games? Maybe the quarterback situation, whatever, Brock Purdy and Dak, you're probably taking Dak. Brock Purdy, I mean, Dak and Jalen Hurts, it's not too far of a gap.
Right.
Jalen Hurts is obviously good in his own right, but Dak Prescott's no slouch. So the biggest thing for me is the defenses of the 49ers and the Eagles. Do you think Dak is going to be able to get this Cowboys team over the top if he has to go up against those defenses on the road?
Right, and I think you're hitting it on the head right there. That's my biggest issue is can Dak perform against the best defenses in the league when you're not getting those easy runs by Tony Pollard and easy first downs by CeeDee Lamb? Can you create something? Can you get out of the pocket and give CeeDee Lamb that extra second or so to get free? Brandon Cooks that split second to get breaking on his route. All of those things are the issues that I look into, and ultimately, I don't have faith that he can beat those type of defenses, and that's why I have reservations about them winning the Super Bowl or even reaching it. But I would be underestimating him and the team. I think they're still one piece away from being like favorites, like locks, but they are just one piece away. But I also think that, the 49ers are one piece away also at quarterback. I think the Eagles are the most complete team. So if you're asking me Eagles versus Dallas, I'll still take the Eagles. So it's like, it's very close, but I do think they have the edge over the 49ers because of quarterback play, but I don't think that they have that edge when it comes to the Eagles. So ultimately, they either need to grab another running back that they can pair alongside Tony Pollard so they can take even more emphasis off of Dak Prescott, or Dak Prescott just needs to stop turning the ball over. And I know he hasn't yet this season, but we know it's coming.
Honestly, I feel like if the Cowboys were able to, control their own destiny and be the 1 seed, host the NFC playoffs, in AT&T Stadium, I feel like Dallas could beat the Eagles. I feel like Dallas could beat the 49ers. I think that's the main difference for what made the Eagles Super Bowl, team last year is the home field advantage. I feel like if the 49ers were at home and they had Brock Purdy in that game, they would have won.
I think if Brock Purdy stayed healthy, they actually would have won that game as well.
Even on the road, that's just how good the 49ers are.
Right.
But if they were at home, I mean, I feel like when you just look at the personnel of the Eagles, right? The defense, they have it. The offense, they have their weapons here and there. It's kind of similar with the Dallas Cowboys. They have the offense with, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Tony Pollard, offensive line, quarterback play. And then they have the defense, of course, so it's just like that's the similarities with these three contenders. And I feel like it comes down to home field advantage,
Mm-hmm.
There's not many teams that have beaten the 49ers, at home when the 49ers are hosting a game. Not many teams have come into their stadium in the playoffs, Levi Stadium in the playoffs, and beaten the 49ers. I can't even count one. And the Eagles, I mean, probably same for them. They hosted the whole NFC playoffs last year, won Super Bowl. They hosted the NFC playoffs in 2017, went to the Super Bowl. So it's the same.
Dallas does have a record of losing at AT&T though.
They'll lose. They could lose at AT&T, but I feel like that's their only chance. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you're saying their only chance to make it past those two teams is by securing that overall.
Number one, yeah.
Yeah, I get you. I'm on board with that. I do think they need things like that to break their way in order to win. And ultimately, if you give me 49ers or the Eagles on a neutral field, I'm taking both the 49ers and the Eagles. They both had dominating performances this week. I mean, the Eagles less so, but I think the Patriots are sneaky good. So ultimately, like, the Cowboys aren't playing against aren't looking to, they're not looking to be better than the New York Giants. They're looking to be better than the 49ers and the Eagles. I don't think that this 1 week has shown us anything to believe that they are better than those two this coming into the season. So that's something that I need to see moving forward. I still would like the Dallas Cowboys to be more run reliant, like this game in game one. They didn't need Dak, and you want more games where you don't need Dak. And ultimately, if they went out and signed I don't know, Jonathan Taylor, maybe, something like that. Like, I know that's kind of like cream of the crop, but like ultimately, like a running back that can really produce on that level will really change the dynamic for this team. And ultimately, we see what's going on with the 49ers. Their ability to dive deep into the run game is opening up so much. This week, boxes were full trying to stop CMC. Ayuk was getting one-on-one coverage with Patrick Peterson. All respect to Patrick Peterson. We love him. I'm a Vikings fan. But one-on-one with Brandon Ayuk, the rave of the offseason, like, that's easy pickings. And I don't think Dak sees enough of that coverage because a lot of the Tony Pollard is feared, but to get that continuous loading of the box, you need to put the other defense on notice with your running game. And it's just, if they dived into that identity a little bit more, I think that is the path for them to win the Super Bowl this year.
Okay. I just feel like with the 49ers, it's so much more tricky because their weapons surrounding CMC as well. It's just like CMC was probably their missing piece, but before all that, they had Kittle, Debo, Ayuk.
But so, it is CMC that kind of put him here. That's putting them over
the missing piece. Yeah.
It's just, I do believe Tony Pollard is good. It's just like, I don't think like he'll command the respect of defenses ultimately because he's a slider back. He's not, bullying his way through the front seven. And it's like, it takes that, and neither is CMC. So I'm kind of like contradicting myself a little bit here, but it's just like, I think there's levels to it. And I don't think Pollard's on that level.
I know what you mean. But moving on, so that was your disappointment, the Giants. You said you had two. Did you have another?
Yes. Another disappointment was Josh Allen and the Bills. I don't know if you want to talk about that, or what were the disappointments. We can go ahead with that.
We can get into that. So yeah, disappointments. Josh Allen. What were your thoughts on that with the Bills?
Yeah. I mean, I came into this game really looking forward to seeing a battle of Aaron Rodgers, seeing a battle of defenses, seeing a battle of run games. I was just very, very, very curious to see how this game unfolded because it had so much implications on the league, on the AFC North. I mean, the AFC, is it the West?
AFC East.
East. Just that divisional race, all of that. It was so like such an important game, prime time, Monday Night Football, only other game on TV. And ultimately, 4 plays in, we see Aaron Rodgers go down, and we're thinking the Bills got this in the bag, and ultimately they do. But that first interception was a sign in the first half. They were up, I think, 10-3 at that point, and Josh Allen, for no reason at all, throws a slinger all the way downfield to no one, double coverage, misses the safety in the middle, easy interception. At this point, you're up 10-3. All you need to do is play conservatively. The Jets can't do anything. Zach Wilson can't throw the ball past 10 yards, and yet he's still playing this gunslinger offense. This tells me more than anything, coordinators matter. Brian Daboll and Josh Allen were a perfect match, and now that Brian Daboll's gone, who's giving him that coaching that he needs? Telling him even his mechanics look a little off, throwing off the back foot. Like, all of these things are issues that I'm seeing. Ultimately, Josh Allen needs to play better. If he's going to be put in that echelon of quarterbacks like a Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, I'm thinking about Jalen Hurts. He needs to play like he has some sense. He's playing like he has no IQ, and like he looks like a high school player or a college player playing with high school kids, where he thinks he can just bully his way through, and that's just not the way. Just because your arm is the strongest and you can lower your shoulder as a quarterback does not mean you can do that with NFL talent. You need to be able to sit in that pocket, make your progressions, rifle that pass, and he did that a couple plays, but the consistency, the taking care of the football, the hubris has just gone away from him, and he needs to do a lot better. Very, very disappointed in his performance. Very disappointed in his demeanor and his attitude when it comes to the game. It's just not something that I like, and obvious coaching issue there.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it last year. Just the lapses in concentration from Josh Allen that just hurt the Bills ultimately. And this is the reason why I had, not to be a prisoner of the moment here, but this is the reason why I had Jalen Hurts above Josh Allen, was because of the poise and the needless mistakes that Josh Allen continuously makes is continuing to hurt his team. I just don't see why they're doing those sort of plays, those big time plays, when they're in leading that game, when they have full control of that game without Aaron Rodgers. They don't need to play that type of style. They're getting good production out of James Cook. They're getting good production out of Stephon Diggs. Keep the ball, keep it conservative if you need to. Like, you don't need to be a flashy offense all the time. Like, that's the thing I feel like is key to winning. And that's the difference between these top AFC quarterbacks and Josh Allen, who has the talent, but sometimes doesn't. He just lacks the discipline a lot of the times in key moments. And when you're losing games like that against the Jets, very winnable game against the Jets, led by Zach Wilson, it's concerning. You know, these turnovers were sometimes self-inflicted, most of them self-inflicted. The fumble, I don't know, but
I mean, the fumble itself, like, I get it. It was like he missed the handoff, so he kind of just like panicked into the rush.
Yeah,
and do that. You can't do that.
Also, yeah, you don't need to try to be a hero. That's hero type of play. But that's Josh Allen. That's what Josh Allen is kind of like. He has this sort of, he plays like Cam Newton. Like I said, Cam Newton sort of esque is like he wants to be Superman all the time and be the guy. But this sort of team is built for you not to be like that. Like, you have receiving talent around you. You have a strong defense around you that was continuously putting pressure on the opposing offense. So you're getting in positions to not need to be a hero. So I don't see why he continues to try to be this MVP type of player when sometimes he just doesn't need to. He needs to be a poised quarterback that just knows what to do in that certain moment. Yeah. And when you're sort of making these hero plays that you don't need to, it's just like, why? And honestly, that last sort of drive is what he needs to do. That last sort of drive to get them into overtime, that's what we need out of Josh Allen. Like, just hit your best receiver, hit Diggs. You got Diggs like 3 or 4 times on that drive. Like, continuously just keep it simple, and you're going to be able to win the football game. Not even just be in the football game. That game shouldn't even gone to overtime. Like, it's frustrating, and the way it ended, I mean, you start off the first drive of overtime, you start with the ball, not able to get it done, and that's all she wrote: punt return, walk-off touchdown. So you got to be able to capitalize on your opportunities, and that's the biggest disappointment with Josh Allen, is that this Bills team is going to be good enough to get themselves into big time games, big time moments, but it's going to be on the shoulders of Josh Allen on whether or not they advance. And Josh Allen is continuously hurting them in these moments.
Yeah, you know what? You definitely hit it on the head in that preseason game preseason pod we had. You told me. You said Josh Allen doesn't have the poise, and I think more and more we're realizing that we just have to put the brakes on Josh Allen when it comes to the cream of the crop. I think ultimately what he's missing is coaching, though. I think that's the biggest takeaway from my game is under Brian Daboll, he was not doing this. Even last year, we saw the regression into this, and this year looks like it's completely gone off the rails. Now, this is a good defense by the Jets. I don't want to just scoff at the defense because it's quite literally one of the top 5 defenses in the league right now. Very dominant. It makes their impact felt on the defensive line, their corners, all 3 levels. They're playing great ball, stopping the run even. doing a good job. But ultimately, Josh Allen has the weapons at his disposal to make this offense move down the field slowly. But he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to take that slow route like you're mentioning. He wants to do that big play every time. And it's just, I'm fed up. I'm really fed up because he has the roster. And what are the excuses? At this point, this is a Sean McDermott issue, though. Ultimately, this is going to get Sean McDermott fired because that's the only thing that can change at this point. They gave him a wide receiver, a running back. They brought in Damian Harris, or is that his name? Damian Harris from the Patriots came in and he did his thing. He made a couple good runs, even caught a pass, I believe. What else do you need? You know what I'm saying? Maybe you could use another slot receiver or something like that, but you have Diggs. Spam him like you were. Like, that's a viable option. Even Gabe Davis came in clutch in that last drive. What are you doing here? Like, there's no need to do all of that. I think Sean McDermott has lost control of this offense and lost control of Josh Allen until McDermott asserts his dominance and asserts his new philosophy, which I don't even know what it is at this point. He needs to do something because it's him that's going to lose his job first and foremost, and then they're going to ask questions afterwards. So ultimately, I personally would like to see Josh Allen with a better offensive mind. I need him with someone that knows what they're doing, that can put a scheme around Josh Allen that actually works for Josh Allen. Right now, it doesn't seem to be a scheme. It seems like the scheme is Josh Allen, and that's not good for anyone. So I would like to see a new offensive coordinator at least, if not a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough because like McDermott and everything he's done since he got there really like brought this team to this level. And I just feel like the stagnancy is starting to become old. These continuous like playoff losses, like they're trying to hit the next level. And if they're not going to hit the next level, that's when it becomes a problem. And I feel like a lot of their team is still on the shoulders of Josh Allen because of his mistakes and putting them in those positions. So I just think it does come down to coaching, of course, but you want to see Josh Allen sort of turn this around because it will, like you said, sort of cost these guys their jobs because it's going to come down to coaching at the end of the day, and they're going to choose Josh Allen over a coach.
But what I'm saying is, like, the difference between Josh Allen now and even 2 years ago when they made to the AFC Championship game is there is no Brian Daboll whispering in his ear, telling him to make better, smarter plays, giving him a scheme of that really works to his strong suit. It seems like they're just free falling it and just allowing him to do whatever he wants to do, and that's an actual coaching issue. I'm not just saying like Josh Allen's lack of production is going to hurt the coaches. I'm saying the coach's lack of ability to scheme for Josh Allen will get them fired itself. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I see what you're saying. I just feel like they're kind of tapping into that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like they're tapping into his sort of takeover ability a little bit too much.
Completely.
And that's what they kind of want, though, because like look at it with the Bears. The Bears are kind of tapping into Justin Fields' ability to rush, and they're kind of leaning on that. The Bills' offense is kind of leaning on Josh Allen's heroic sort of potential and kind of leaning on that when you don't need to rely on that formula when you have all this talent around you. So it does also fall back on coaching. I just think Josh Allen, could be better in terms of the decision making when he's launching these balls however many yards down the field into a complete interception every single time. Like, that comes down to the player, but the coaching, right. I feel like this is their game plan. This is what they want to do. And it is tough when you have a defensive head coach because when your offensive coordinator gets those looks, he has to go get his own opportunities. Brian Daboll leaves. Right. So it's tough in that regard, but you got to sort of live with it. And Josh Allen's he got to take his accountability, and then the offensive coordinator as well kind of scheme up better for him for sure. I agree with that.
There's definitely blame to go around, but ultimately, in what scheme is it allowed that a quarterback gets to just chuck it downfield with no clear opening? You could tell that there was no designed play for that man to get open. Like, there was no scheming, along a deep route open. It was just Josh Allen deciding to do that because he has the green light to do that. And it's just like, why are you giving a quarterback the green light to do that without giving him the scheme that opens that up? That's like, this is my big thing. Like,
I have a question. So yeah. Kind of like with certain quarterbacks, they get that freedom once they reach a certain level. You look at Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers with Matt LaFleur. A lot of people were saying it was more so Aaron Rodgers when he was winning MVPs than anything Matt LaFleur was doing. And Matt LaFleur wasn't getting that credit as a head coach. Do you think that's sort of treatment that Josh Allen's getting, that he's at this level now where he can kind of call the shots a little bit more?
Yeah, and I think it's a little premature, and it's not just premature, but it's ultimately not a good winning strategy. Even like, I don't want to say this about Aaron Rodgers, but if you watch the first couple of snaps, why is Aaron Rodgers holding the ball for so long? It's because he's been given the grace by Hackett to go ahead, you do what you want to do. Aaron Rodgers himself. This is a guy who's been a seasoned professional, who's won championships, who's succeeded multiple MVPs. He has the reins, and I'm okay with some quarterbacks like an Aaron Rodgers getting those reins. But even getting those reins, even if it was justified, there are side effects. The side effect was seen with Aaron Rodgers. Why is Aaron Rodgers holding the ball for so long? Trying to just like disregard defensive linemen like he's still 25. No, you're not 25. You're 40 years old. You can't just sit there and just lollygag with the ball. That hubris ended up eating him up, Aaron Rodgers. And in that same light, one, I don't even think Josh Allen is mature enough for that type of situation where you give him the reins no matter what. I don't think he showed us that he has that type of poise. But two, once he had that opportunity, what he's doing with it is like Roger, he's not utilizing it to his best ability. He's lollygagging with the ball, playing hero ball, and just ultimately, this is a head coaching issue. I can't see past that. The fact that someone in the front office, in the coaching huddle, is making that decision to give all of the reins to Josh Allen after us seeing this time and time again last year, and then coming into this year, like, that's setting up your quarterback for failure. Like, ultimately, that decision itself needs to be reprehended. Like, this is not something that's okay and acceptable, in my opinion. McDermott needs to change something, or it will be his job, and deservingly so. I don't know. That's my biggest takeaway. I think it is Josh Allen's fault, but it's not like there's not like a stoppable great quarterback in there. There is, but it's up to the coaching to get that out of him and make that a consistency, make that into his routine instead of falling back into his bad habits. So that's on them. I think he's missing Dable a lot.
Okay. No, that's all fair.
Yeah.
So my disappointments outside of the Bengals, which we talked about, I'm gonna say the Vikings. Basically the Vikings, how they started the season was just so disappointing. Self-inflicted errors that cost them that game. Ultimately, they outplayed offensively. They outplayed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It didn't seem like the Buccaneers were giving them any sort of problems until the Vikings kept giving them the game. Huh. And that's what, Baker finally got a little bit comfortable, finally started getting some good, output or production rather out of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And he started getting a little bit more confident. He started running the ball a little bit with his own legs, started talking a little bit of trash, tapping into who he is. So I feel like the Vikings kind of gave them that game and gave them that confidence to kind of do those sort of things when they had the talent to just outplay this team and, basically finish this game early. But they wanted to keep it close. They wanted to continue to, allow Kirk Cousins to get these quarterback pressures. And that hurts their chances because we know what happens when Kirk Cousins get pressured. So it's tough. But I will say there were some flashes of, a better defense for sure that we can't discount and we can't ignore. We just got to see those self-inflicted errors kind of, eliminate from this offense, because that's going to continue to be the downfall of the Minnesota Vikings, especially this year when, you're coming off of a year last year where people will call it a fluke, being 13 and making the playoffs. You need to be able to capitalize on your shortcomings last year. You can't have Justin Jefferson have 2 catches in the second half of the game. I was speaking on it before the season about, will Justin Jefferson have 2,000 yards? And I was like, Justin Jefferson would have these big first halves last year, but go quiet in the second half. And I don't know if that's on Justin Jefferson. People will more so blame that on Kirk and the offense. Yeah. But I just feel like there's so much more room for growth for this Vikings team. They just got to tap into a little bit more, and then they'll be fine. But the offensive line is definitely an issue.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think that's exactly what I was going to start with the Vikings. Their offensive line is just completely in shambles. Christian Darrisaw went out, which is their lead tackle, someone that they have a lot of hope in the future, and they really put all their eggs in that basket.
Great. My bad. Garrett Bradbury was the one who got injured. And he left the game, and
Wait,
then
Darrisaw also left the game, I thought.
well, he did leave the game, but it started with Bradbury, I think, and then that's when the backup tackle they sort of had that mess up on the snap where Ed Ingram kind of digged his hand and then
Oh, right,
caused
right.
a fumble and everything. So I think it was the chemistry issue on the line too. So, but yeah, Darius did go out.
Yeah, and ultimately, what I was gonna get at is just too much. They put too much eggs in that one Darisaw basket. Obviously, he's promising on that line, but outside of him, there's nothing else promising on that line. The chemistry would be the only other thing coming in, being able to bring in the same five that you had last year. But it takes one injury to throw off that chemistry as well. So ultimately, I think the Vikings need to do something about their offense. I think they're tight on money, and what it seems like they're doing is offloading a lot of their contracts in preparation for next offseason to have a lot more cap space. And Kirk Cousins comes off the books, a couple other guys comes off the books, and they'll have their opportunity to rebuild how they want to see fit. This is relatively new management front office. This being their second offseason. Last offseason being his first, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's first offseason. So his ability to build a team is not completely been judged yet, but I do think that it was promising. The team construction was promising. I don't think it was an issue of talent at all, more so an issue of this team didn't play together during the offseason, didn't play together in the preseason, pardon me. And this was their first time playing together in a high leverage situation, and it showed. There was a lot of rust, even in that interception on that goal line, the pass to KJ Osborne that was intercepted. That was really the beginning of that momentum shift. And I noticed that right there, even he had Jordan Addison that was, like open that he could have passed it to, but there was a lack of trust, I feel like, and he kind of trusted KJ more, and he went ahead and tossed it. That's a catch that KJ needs to make. I don't think that's an error by Kirk Cousins. He trusted you. He put that pass right on your shoulder, on the numbers, and he was unable to make that catch ultimately. Another self-inflicted wound. Ultimately, if they don't do those multiple turnovers, which last year we weren't a high turnover team, the Vikings weren't. So them having 3 turnovers in that first game is an issue, and I think is an issue that is not something that is like them. And then their inability, which to make that game-winning drive, speaks a lot more to their offensive line and their lack of chemistry. So ultimately, it's a team, like you said, that should have taken care of business and didn't. So I am disappointed on that front. But ultimately, it's still promising, and I'm not awfully worried, even though they do have a tough schedule compared to last year. They need to do a little bit better. I think this is a win that they're going to end up regretting, that they're going to look back when the NFC playoffs come around, and they'll be fighting with teams like Seattle, like the Rams, like New York Giants for that seventh spot. This loss might come to bite them in the ass. But hey, 20 points given up. Ultimately, this offense is challenged of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they allowed 20 points by Baker-led offense. However, 20 points is relatively good, and I think that's very promising for the Vikings defense. That's a little bit of my bias showing from that take. I don't think I grilled them hard enough, frankly. But ultimately, what can you do? It is a game one, and I don't think this is I don't think the turnovers are really characteristic of this team, and I do think that will get better. So it's really the O-line that I have a lingering issue with.
Yeah, I mean, just look at last year. I mean, the way they started the season, first game in the O'Connell era against the Packers, they came out firing, no mistakes, just came out like a different sort of energy, different sort of team. It just seemed like they were going. I mean, and last year, I mean, they probably didn't play anybody in the preseason either. So it was just, it's concerning.
Can you give me 1 second? I'm getting someone's at the door. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. But yeah, I just think it's concerning because the Vikings started the season losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which they were obviously a favorite in that game, and You're on a short week again, going to Philly for week 2.
Mhm.
It's just like you can find yourself in a hole, 0-2 hole very quickly, and that's just what happens when you don't capitalize on your opportunities. Now, I'd rather the Vikings, you know, I'd rather it be this year, because I feel like the Vikings last year, even though they started off hot, it just seemed like we were always set up to fail with that defense. So I do like the promising signs of that defense. So I know there's room for, just correcting those little offensive mental mistakes, and they'll be fine. But you don't want to put yourself in an 0-2 hole. And
Right.
that's kind of what they set themselves up for. And that's probably a big reason why they were so disappointed with themselves and their own performance, because they probably thought, like everybody else, that they could have won this game with ease if they just kept their foot on the gas pedal, capitalized on their drives. But it doesn't help when you go into the red zone, however many times, and turn the ball over.
Right.
That's my biggest thing, and those mental mistakes still creep into the Vikings play. That's not just something that's new. So I want to see that corrected.
Improved for sure. I think one thing that you touched on, and a homie, buddy of mine, Nahum, who is a guest of this pod once.
Yeah.
I was talking to him about the Giants loss, and he told me the one silver lining was that when you get your butt handed to you that early in the season, it makes you reconsider who you think you are. And I think that's a really good thing to happen early on. Get that, slap across the face and be like, wow, do we just lose to the Baker Mayfield led Tampa Bay Bucks, who might be literally the worst team in the NFC, like, or if not them, like very close. So like losing to that type of team, I think put some type of emphasis on this practice coming here. I think they'll come into the Philadelphia game even stronger minded. But if they go down 0-2, they know what it is that got them there. So I think ultimately it's not all bad, but it is a big disappointment nevertheless.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know who the Vikings thought they were, but like after that playoff game last year, I mean, they should have been humbled after that.
Right.
Because this team has not arrived yet. Like, we need to capitalize off of what we built last year, realize what our mistakes were, which was obviously defense. So you fire Donatel, bring in Flores. You kind of realize what your poor things are. You make some defensive additions in the offseason, and defense shows up in this game. But it's the mistakes that I think that continue that make me concerned, because it's not like the Vikings haven't shown this in the past, and it's not like it can't come up again. So that's just my biggest worry, is like, how can the Vikings kind of get this consistency out of this team, top to bottom, offensive and defensive performance, complete performances, not these squeak it out games that we saw last year. We want progress, and we can't rely on those things, especially when it comes to the playoffs. So I just want to see a recipe for success that the Vikings are going to hang their heads on this whole year. And that's when I'll become a little bit more optimistic. But my biggest thing about them is, my biggest hesitation for the NFC North even is that offensive just lapse that they have, and those empty games from Justin Jefferson, those empty games from Kirk Cousins that almost always happen.
Right.
Every now and then, like those outliers, I guess, but still, like, we don't want to have those. So I think what separates the top of the NFC from the Vikings is just consistency. But what a win it would be if they did, beat Philly, because that would just change the whole narrative of everything, and that would show actual progress, because you went into Philly last year, week 2, and they were obviously manhandled in that game.
Yeah.
So this can be a proving ground for you. You saw what Darius Slay did to, Justin Jefferson last year, held him in check. So this is a proven game for everybody. Hawkinson, Madison, Addison. So I want to see the offense play better, because that's my biggest thing now, is like the defense used to be the biggest thing. Now that's taken care of. I want to see the offense do what we've known them to do.
Right.
Just eliminate the little mental mistakes that always come, and I think they'll be fine. But yeah, that's my disappointment, because they shouldn't be in this position they are right now, even though it's week 1.
Kirk's also on a contract year, so he plays well on contract years. So we'll see how it goes. Not the greatest start, but ultimately, I think this is a big moment for the Vikings. Who do you want to be? If it could get ugly quick. You lose the first 3 games, all of a sudden we're thinking about tank for Caleb. Like, what's going on? So I don't think we're in that position yet, but those questions will start looming when you go down 0-2, if you go down 0-2.
Yeah. And then, moving on, we have a little bit more current events topics, but we'll kind of sprinkle those in when we talk about these score predictions. So you can start off with Minnesota and Philadelphia for Thursday night.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. The line is Eagles -7 right now, 7.5. So they have everyone, and it's in Philadelphia. So it makes sense that the Vikings are heavy underdogs. Ultimately, I do think that this will be a little bit more competitive than the score even implies. But I feel like it will come down to the last possession, and where ultimately our defense is going to fold, is what I kind of have suspected. So I think the game is going to be 27-17. The Vikings are going to lose. Tough one for me. Tough one.
I'm going to pick the Vikings in this one because while Philadelphia did win their game, we kind of hinted on it earlier that it wasn't a convincing win. And while you did say that also New England's a sneaky good team, I feel like the offense of Philly underperformed, regardless of how good the New England defense is. I feel like the underperformance of the offense was a little bit like something you can look at if you're the Vikings even and be like, okay, with our defensive performance in week 1, this is also something we can build on. So I think it's possible for the Vikings to put together a performance where their offense comes to play. They just got to get the ball out quick and also keep the defensive line, less likely to pressure because, the interior of the Vikings offensive line is the biggest worry, right? So we need to be able to stop those, Fletcher Cox and all those guys and the big men in the middle from really like deteriorating our offensive line. Mm-hmm. But if you can hold up a little bit and get Justin Jefferson the ball, that's going to be big because that's the reason why Justin Jefferson has these like games in prime time and is because the offensive line can't hold up. Right. So it's more so on the offensive line holding up than Justin Jefferson not being able to, put together a performance. I feel like if we can hold up a little bit, just a little bit, then we open it up for everybody. Hawkinson included, Addison included, even KJ Osborne to have a bounce back game.
Madison. Mm-hmm.
Madison even like he had a promising start to the season, in my opinion. So I feel like the Vikings have the formula offensively. Just defensively, like what can you do? What are you going to do against a running quarterback this year? Last year, we struggled against them all year, running quarterbacks. This year, another test, play Jalen Hurts. What are you going to do? Are you going to make him a runner? Are you going to make him a passer? How are you going to balance that defensive attack? So they obviously have receiving weapons, and they obviously have a very strong offensive line. So how are we going to balance that? That's what I'm interested to see. But I feel like the speed of the Vikings defense, the aggressiveness is going to be able to take us forward and make the difference in this game. I think it's going to be 24-20 Minnesota.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of like the points you brought up. I think ultimately, I think the Eagles had a tough opponent last week, and I still think they're as dominant as they were last year, especially in the NFC. So I'm a little hesitant to pick the Vikings. But you make some good points, and if we can replicate some type of slowing down Jalen Hurts, that would be huge. But I do think our biggest issue is going to be with covering AJ Brown in this, like on the outside, and then at the same time trying to guard Devonta in the middle. It's going to be a tough task, but ultimately they will need to continue to contain Jalen Hurts in order to make that a reality.
Yeah. Moving on, next game, Green Bay at Atlanta.
Yep. And here, I have I like the Packers, like I said, but the Atlanta Falcons are a team that I loved watching in the first half. I had a lot of Bijan Robinson in my fantasy team, so I was tuning into that Atlanta-Carolina game. And I just love what I'm seeing from Atlanta. They know exactly what they are. They know exactly what their identity is. They stuff you down with the run in multiple different ways, in the outside, in the middle, down, try to get on the edge. Throw the ball minimally, but they do it off play action, get you off your foot, off the back foot. That's ultimately, I love to see that. And this is all to pick the Falcons. I love the Falcons, how they're going. Their defense looks like they're very stingy. They're not looking to give up plays over the top. They're making you beat them in between, really shortening that time of the clock. running that clock, making you run the clock, ultimately playing complementary ball. You know, I love how much I love that. Ultimately, I have the Falcons winning 23-20, and even that is a bit of a reach for how many points will be scored in this game. I could see it just being a teens game, but I'll go 23-20 for the home team, Atlanta.
Yeah, you hit it on the head with that. I'm picking Atlanta as well. I just feel like when I look at this game, both quarterbacks are kind of easing into it a little bit this season. Jordan Love obviously had a very good performance, but it still feels like he doesn't. He's
Yeah.
playing within the offense, you know what I'm saying? And so is Desmond Ritter playing
Mhm.
within the offense, not really making any big time risks, and obviously had very good game out of Aaron Jones that helped. You know, the numbers look better for Jordan Love. But I think when it comes down to another home game for Atlanta this week and the way their defense played last week with the pressure they got on defense in the front seven, and then Jesse Bates, 2 interceptions,
Mhm.
I feel like with the home field advantage, I'm going to lean towards Atlanta 17-13.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
also, shout out to Tyler Algier with 2 touchdowns. I mean, he played well with Bijan Robinson in that backfield and him. Like, that's a two-headed monster right there.
monster.
It just makes it so much more easier for Desmond Ritter, honestly. And it's not like you're relying fully on the receiving threats of like Drake London and Kyle Pitts, you know. So it's good options to have. 17-13 Atlanta.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, and you know, you're right there with that line, 13-17. That's what I see as well. So, ultimately, I think we're right on the money. Do you want to move on to the Raiders Bills?
Uh, is that? Let's see if that's my next game. Yeah, Raiders at Bills.
Yeah, Raiders at Bills. The line is at Bills -10, and I am completely in on it. Even though the Raiders played a great game last game, they played a good complementary ball where even though they weren't able to get the running game going, Jimmy Garoppolo showed great signs of using his new receiver, Jacoby Myers, as well as Devontae, you know, being Devontae Adams. Even though he wasn't that huge play threat, excuse me, even though he wasn't that big play guy that we are used to seeing, even him being on the outside gave a lot of looks in the middle where Jimmy Garoppolo loves to eat. So he was able to get Jacoby Myers fed a lot. And ultimately, this is a better team than I thought going into this year. But ultimately, the Raiders don't have that upside that I was looking for when I was watching them. They still seem to have a little bit more conservatism built in. And I think that's kind of what's baked into that Jimmy Garoppolo experience. You don't really get those big plays, those overtopping wow type of plays. You get that, you know, good 10 to 15 yard gain. Ultimately, he's good at protecting the ball and he'll get that clean conservative game out every year, week in and week out. However, the Bills defense is a defense that I saw a lot of great things from, even though they didn't let much of anything happen with Wilson at the helm. Jimmy Garoppolo is similar to that, where he's not going to make anything major happen with his legs. They're going to keep him contained. They're going to make him throw the ball, which is, I think, plays into the hands of the Buffalo Bills defense. And ultimately, I think they're going to have a chip on their shoulder. Josh Allen, especially, is going to come in with the mentality of I can't lose. I can't have a performance like I did in Monday night. It's somewhat of a quick turnaround, but I don't think that'll affect up too much. So with that being said, I have the Bills winning 32-20.
32-20.
Yes, yes. Pretty dominant fashion.
Yeah, I feel like the Bills will do. They'll win this game. They'll do just fine. Not gonna say Week 1 was a fluke by any means, you know, because those are reoccurring issues with Josh Allen and everything like that. But I think for this game, you know, Jimmy Garoppolo, does he have what it takes to, you know, put the team on his back or anything? No. Sure, you could have a really good game from Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Josh Jacobs, but you're still gonna have to be able to stop that defense from getting pressure. You're still gonna have to be able to stop Josh Allen from doing his thing, and James Cook, Damian Harris, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid. It's a very strong offense that I don't think the the Raiders are built to stop. Whereas I feel like where the Jets succeeded was just off of Josh Allen mistakes.
Mm.
So yeah, if they keep those in to a minimum, I think the Bills have this game. I'm gonna say 26-10 Buffalo. Next one, we got Baltimore at Cincinnati, divisional game, AFC North.
Yes, sir. This is a game that I'll be watching super closely. I cannot wait for this one, especially. I just the battle of defenses is one thing that I'm looking into. The Bengals also, in their own right, for Week 1, they played a good defensive game. It's not like they got trampled over by or anything. So coming into this one, the Ravens come fresh off of a great win, great we're here type of win. Nothing like that's groundbreaking. Obviously, they beat the Texans, but just like a team that really rallies the troops, a win that really rallied the troops last week with the Ravens. I think they have a lot of faith in what they're building there, with even Odell Beckham being a more veteran leader. But even if he wasn't producing, his impact in the locker room, I feel like is being felt. Zay Flowers is an amazing addition. I think he's the best weapon that Lamar has played with outside of Mark Andrews in essentially his whole career. So loving that combination and that connection. I think the Bengals have a chip on their shoulder coming in to play with something. However, I don't think it's going to be enough. I think they will be upset in their own building. I have the Ravens winning this one 26 20. Let me go. I'm going to go 27-23.
27-23.
Yeah. Actually, let's go 28-24.
Okay.
24 Ravens.
28-24 Baltimore Ravens.
The way I see this game going is a high-powered first 3 quarters, and then it slows down in the fourth quarter. Bengals down by 4 points. They go ahead and march down and just can't get a successful touchdown in. It's kind of what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we're going to get a little bit of a surprisingly maybe lower scoring game than what you would expect for these sort of teams. These are obviously very,
I can see that too, for sure.
Very good teams here. I definitely expect a bounce back performance from Cincinnati, and regardless of Baltimore playing Houston and winning that game, I guess convincingly, I feel like there were some moments, especially with Lamar Jackson interception and some of those mistakes that Houston capitalized on, that I have some reason for concern, and that's why I'm going to pick the Bengals to win 20-17 off the back of Evan McPherson game-winning field goal.
Okay, that's fair. And to your point about the mistakes that the Ravens made, there were mistakes. And I think mistakes in game 1 are good to have. I think playing a seamless game would have been the thing that would have been uncharacteristic of them. So playing with a mistake gives them something to focus on here and during this week of practice, really focusing on making less of those mistakes. And ultimately, I think they have a purpose with that mixing of trying to not make mistakes like they did in game 1. It's a good balance. I just like where they're trending. Even the locker room speeches I was listening to post the Ravens win, they weren't overly ecstatic. They were saying, enjoy the moment. Wins are hard to come by in this league, so enjoy this win. But don't forget, we made a lot of mistakes. We have a lot to improve on. And that's the talking point that I wanted to hear, and that's exactly what I heard. That's what is giving me hope, that they're going to come in here and fix some of those mistakes. Play Lamar. It starts with Lamar playing a little bit more carefully as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously things they know they can correct. Cincinnati, of course, same thing. So I'm interested to see how both teams are kind of going to respond to their mistakes. I just think divisional matchup, these are just the tight games, the margins. I feel like Cincinnati kind of have that experience at this point, that they kind of get this one at the end. But Zay Flowers is definitely a problem. Rashad Bateman had a reception or two that showed me that he's kind of back, from injury and everything. He can contribute. Hopefully to get a little bit more from Odell. J.K. Dobbins' injury obviously hurts them, but they got I think 2 touchdowns out of Justice Hill, so we'll see how the running game holds up.
Right.
But I think this is the sort of game where we're gonna have to see a little bit more from more vintage Lamar Jackson sort of performance for me to pick the Ravens. But I'm gonna go with the home team.
Sure. Okay.
Next game we got Seattle going to Detroit.
This one's going to be a game to watch with a lot of playoff implications, since these two teams are not in the same division, but they are in the same conference. They are fighting for that advantage that will play big in that down the field. I think Seahawks will come in here with a better mindset, better defensive mindset. I think the Lions had a lot of issues that first game, and they were lucky to win that game. against the Kansas City Chiefs. It definitely took some balls, it took some poise from that team, which they showcased, but definitely some holes. Their running game, the Lions' running game, is not what we thought it would be. Montgomery and Gibbs are a good 1-2 punch. How can we improve that? How can we give them better looks? The O line is obviously really nice. So how can we give them more opportunities to succeed on the running game, which will only open up things for Jared Goff in the passing game? So ultimately, I do think if that fumble doesn't happen early in that second quarter or first quarter, the Lions go in there and it's more of a convincing win than they had. Ultimately, I'm super high on the Lions, and I think they'll go in and take care of business here against the Seahawks. I have the game right now 30-27.
Honestly, I feel like Detroit might not lose a home game this year. I have this game with the Lions beating the brakes off beating the brakes off the Seahawks. I'm gonna say 35-13 Detroit. I just feel like this is a coming out party more so than last week was for Detroit. This is a home game, first home game of the season. After that, obviously City is probably excited about that last week, that win against the Super Bowl champions.
Mm-hmm.
Jahmyr Gibbs, I expect a big time performance out of him, and David Montgomery as well. They got a real tight end in Sam Laporta. Amon-Ra St. Brown came to play last week. I expect another big game from him.
Yeah.
I expect 300 plus yards passing for Jared Goff. And I expect the defense to come to play. Aiden Hutchinson, showed last week that he's one of the best rising defensive players in the league. I expect him to double down, getting some sacks on Geno Smith this game. So I'm gonna say 35-13. I have concerns with the Seahawks this year.
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm giving them a little bit too much grace by giving them 27, to be honest with you.
Next one, we got the Chargers going to Tennessee.
Chargers, Tennessee. I liked what I saw from the Chargers last game. The only issue is their defense. They're putting so much money into their defense, and their inability to work out, it will be an Achilles heel for this defense, for this team and as a whole. Ultimately, I like to see what they're doing on offense. The Titans, I think, are more so what I expected. A team that's heavy on the run, targeting D-Hop a lot, but ultimately are not spectacular in any phase of the football. Their defense is not overly dominant. Their offense isn't overly dominant. No unit is dominating, and that's my issue with the Titans. They're a really well-coached team. I think the Chargers, after taking that L that they took last week, I think they'll come back a little bit more prepared, and I think this will be much – I don't want to call it a blowout, but it will be a dominant showing by the Chargers. Even though the scoreboard won't look like it, it'll look like something like 20-27 Chargers, but I think the game will look way worse.
So 27-20 Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of leaning on the Titans to come out with a better performance this week. They relied heavily on the field goal units, getting them points. Nick Folk last week against the Saints. I think we're going to see a change at home. Obviously, they still rely heavily on Derrick Henry, and Hopkins got his fair share of targets last game, which obviously good that he hasn't lost too much of a step. I know some people were concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
I just think in this sort of game, Tennessee can kind of get the best out of the Chargers defense, and enough so to win this game, especially when you consider some of the lapses that the offense of the Chargers sometimes has, even as explosive as they are.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say 26-20 Titans in this game. Home field advantage is kind of making me lean towards the Titans.
Okay.
Next one. So we got Chicago going to Tampa Bay, the 1-0 Buccaneers.
Yes, sir. This is going to be one of the uglier games to watch. However, Detroit, Chicago has one of the worst defenses, especially on the running game, which helps the Baker and the offense there. Relying on the running game is something that they want to do, even though they're not super efficient in there. I think they want to play more of the complementary type of ball where they rely on their running game and let their defense handle it, because their defense is still the best unit on the Bucks. So I think it's going to be a slower game. I think Justin Fields will try to blow this game out of proportion, but I see this as a bounce back for the Bears. I don't think the Bears will struggle too much against the Bucks, and the Bucks not being able to generate offense. I think that won't be a problem when it comes to Justin Fields and his ability to get out of the pocket and just scramble and evade and create opportunities. I don't think there's anyone on the level of like DB as last week when the Bears were playing the Packers, with Alexander just completely shutting down DJ Moore. I think that will be a bigger opportunity. So ultimately, I have the Bears winning this one. It's not going to be anything crazy, but 21-17 Bears, I think, will take care of business.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the least eye-catching games of the week. It's a tough one for me, but I feel like Tampa Bay's got a little bit of momentum after that week 1 win, a little bit of juice that Baker Mayfield kind of showed. Got me reason to believe that I'm going to say 14-10 Tampa in this one.
Okay.
I feel like Chicago, obviously going against a lesser opponent, I guess most would say this week, have more reason to be optimistic that they can kind of turn it around. But I think Tampa Bay kind of already has their winning formula in place. So I think they'll lean on that to get this win, 14-10, 2 touchdowns, Baker Mayfield passing. Next one, we got Kansas City going to Jacksonville.
Yeah, this is a big get-right game for the Chiefs. Jacksonville's coming off a good win as well. So this is going to be like complete opposite of the last game we previewed. This will be fireworks will be out. I think teams will have something to prove here. Justin Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence coming out here to make a statement. Like I'm not just beating the Colts at noon, but also being able to come out here and beat the Chiefs at noon. I think that's a statement that he wants to make. Calvin Ridley's looking phenomenal. ETN, their offense, their defense, just completely well-rounded team on the Jag side. But ultimately, I do think there will be an emphasis with Travis Kelce coming back into the fold, and emphasis on the wide receivers playing a more clean game. Kadarius Toney, obviously, looking for that bounce-back game. And I think they'll feed him early in order to regain some of his confidence. So I'm looking forward to this game just as an NFL fan, as a football fan, to watch how this will play out. I have the Chiefs winning 32-27. So I think there will be an opportunity for Trevor Lawrence to win the game late, but I think Chris Jones and that Chiefs defense will come to play.
Yeah, Chris Jones just getting his contract done. That's big after missing last week. So
yeah. I don't like it from his point of view. I don't like the deal for him, but I'm glad he's back ultimately.
I mean, yeah, I guess 1-year contract. I don't know what that.
In the league.
Yeah, I don't know what that's going to do for him. When it expires and what the conversations are like. But he always planned to play this season, so coming back sooner than probably people expected. So it's going to be good for the Chiefs to have that guy on the defensive line to kind of get that pressure on the quarterback. That's what they probably missed a little bit last week on the defensive side, as good as they were. For this game, though, I mean, Jacksonville played really well opening week. Trevor Lawrence had a good showing against Indianapolis. That connection with Calvin Ridley was strong, and you could see it. So he has all his weapons on the offense, and the defense is not too bad either. So Kansas City, though, I feel like they can't go 0-2. I just don't see a scenario where that happens. So I'm going to say Kansas City. A little bit similar score to you. I said 31-28. Harrison Butker, difference maker.
Okay.
Next one. We got Indianapolis going to Houston, the 2 rookie quarterbacks. Before we get into this one, just wanted to see what your thoughts on with that Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson comment about him protecting himself. Obviously Anthony Richardson took some hits on Sunday. What do you think of that comment by Trevor Lawrence, obviously trying to help out another quarterback?
I loved it. I think it was right on the money, man. Like we all saw that. We all see this super ultra talented quarterback coming in as a rookie, inflated sense of self when it comes to who you are relative to other NFL players. This is not college. These guys are playing for real money, for their livelihoods, and they do not, most of these guys on the defensive end don't have these lucrative contracts. They're playing game by game and they're trying to get the best tape out there. And, just letting a quarterback know that, like, you're there and making their presence felt is the biggest job of the defense. And that happening to Richardson, putting his body down on the line multiple times, is not a good flag. That's not something we want to see out of a quarterback. We know what that leads to ultimately down the line. And Trevor Lawrence bringing that up, I think, is just stating the obvious, and he's being just a genuine good person by mentioning that. That's just what it is. But ultimately, I loved Richardson's game one performance. It's way more than I thought. His ability, his poise, he can actually throw the ball. Like, people are talking about him like he was some running back. He can make throws. He has an arm. The mechanics can obviously get better, but this is a guy who has everything it takes to become an NFL quarterback, in my opinion. He showcased it in game one. I think his stats are a little inflated. He did have that touchdown pass to Michael Pittman Jr., which was thrown behind the line of scrimmage, and it was really all Michael Pittman to get it down there. And those little things you won't really see in the box score by just looking at the box score alone. So I think the box score has inflated his like actual production when it comes as a passer. But I just love what I saw out of Anthony Richardson. I think he's already leaps and bounds ahead of like Justin Fields, let's say, as a thrower, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah, I just think his performance it showed confidence. Maybe the box score didn't, maybe it didn't speak to how he actually played, but it definitely showed his confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Because he made some throws where he stuck in the pocket and made the right decisions, and that's big for any sort of rookie quarterback to kind of continue on that. And I'm going to be honest, all these rookie quarterbacks, that's the most impressive thing that they showed this Sunday, even with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Like, they all kind of showed that little bit of confidence that they can play at this level. And you're going to see those mistakes highlighted as rookie quarterbacks, of course. But there were some promising signs for all three of them. But with Anthony Richardson, I mean, yeah, there's so much promise with him that there is some concern if he continuously faces these hits. We saw what happened to Robert Griffin III in his career, and how that took a toll on him. And obviously, as a running quarterback, you want to be able to protect yourself. You want to be able to get out of bounds, slide, and use the tools at your disposal more often than not. Because even though it looks kind of cool for these younger people to see you take those hits and whatever, that you can take it and you're a big guy, it's better for the longevity of your career and the success with the organization if you get down. And I'm sure that's probably a talking point this week with the coaching staff and everything, because he did show a lot of good things, but those are the things that you want to see him get cleaned up. But yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence, shout out to him for giving that comment, because I'm probably sure he faced it as well, with his running style and everything like that. So, I think that's good that he's looking out for another quarterback. But yeah, for this game, Indianapolis going to Houston, two rookie quarterbacks facing off. What do you see here?
Yeah, I don't really like this matchup when it comes to just like football X's and O's. When we break it down, it's going to be tough for both teams as they have inefficient offenses going against defenses that are a little bit better than the offensive units. So I'm eager to see how this plays out for both quarterbacks, kind of putting themselves against one another and trying to outdo one another. I think that would be a good competitive series for just for those two specifically. But ultimately, I just saw more promise out of the Colts than I did out of the Texans. Even though the Texans are at home and they have much to improve. Their running game was very inefficient. They couldn't really get CJ Stroud couldn't really get into his flow. But ultimately, I like Richardson. I think his weapons are a little bit better as well. So I'll be taking the Colts with this one. It's going to be a close game. I don't see either team breaking 20. I think it's going to be something around 19-13.
19-13. Colts.
Colts, yeah.
For me, I'm also picking the Colts. 13-9 though. I just feel like there's only going to be one touchdown in this game, and I think it's just going to come in the red zone perhaps like a little tight end getting a touchdown, or maybe Anthony Richardson gets one in.
Mhm.
I just think that this is going to be 13-9 because both these offenses, with their struggles and their inconsistencies, you won't see a lot of scoring, especially with two rookie quarterbacks that probably aren't, you know, there yet. So you're going to see some flashes in this game, but you're also going to see some rookie mistakes also. So I think 13-9 is an adequate score because of how these defenses, like you said, are the more highlights of these teams. So I'd say 13-9, Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And honestly, I think we're on that same vein with that. I don't think the offenses will score much, but I do think like the fact that they're both playing one another, that rookie quarterback battle, will actually empower them to have a better offensive performance. Just because it's not a dominating defense by any means on either side. So they'll have the opportunity to showcase what they have. And ultimately, even though I don't like the Texans roster and their weapons, especially on offense, I still do believe that they can go ahead and make at least one drive down the field, if not off an error off of Anthony Richardson. Turnovers I do think will be prevalent in this game. So short fields.
Yeah, and definitely with the way the defense played last game for Houston, I mean, I feel like D'Amico Ryans is going to have them being an underrated unit this year. I think he's going to have that defense right within the next 2 or 3 years, maybe even one, because of what he brought to San Fran. So I'm excited for their future, and hopefully CJ Stroud, can kind of put together some good performances this year. But yeah, we both got Indianapolis in that one. Next game, we got San Fran going to play the Rams. Both these teams, week 1 wins.
Yeah. And this is going to be a great game. I think, like we said, I think everyone came in a little bit low on the Rams. I do think this is going to be a get back down to earth type of game, just because of the dominance of the 49ers. But I think McVay will coach a good game again this year and this week. And he has his ability to rile his troops and get a good scheme going for his individual pieces. I think is something that's super unsung. Matthew Stafford has his complete buy-in, of course, and he has great weapons, 2 running backs, multiple receivers, a decent defense. I think this will be a closer game than people give it credit for. However, I still do think the 49ers will win this in a pretty convincing manner. So I'll give them the win 27-19, 49ers.
Ooh, 1-score game.
27-19. Yeah, 1 score, 8 points.
Okay.
And even then, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I just think the Rams are going to go with that weak ass little touchdown. It's not going to be as close as that for sure.
Okay, I see what you mean. For me, I'm gonna say also San Fran. I just feel like they're too dominant, and I just think that the Rams obviously played really well last week, but I think this is just a little bit too high of a level for them to kind of show up in this game. So I got San Fran winning this one 24-13. I mean, last week they were also on the road, and this week they're going to be on the road as well. So I think if they're able to come away with these first 2 road games with the win, I mean, that would do wonders for them and their chances at getting the number 1 seed as well. Probably means they're going to have more home games towards the end of the season, I would assume. But 24-13, the Rams, obviously, Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, Kyron Williams, Matthew Stafford all came to play last week. But I just think it's too tall of a task in this one. San Fran defensively, I feel like it's going to be too much for Matthew Stafford to handle. Offensively, I just think there's no way even Aaron Donald can stop this offense. So ultimately, 24-13, it's going to be a decent showing. Maybe, 1 touchdown I have for San Fran. I mean, for the Rams. Maybe Puka Nacua gets it. I don't know, but 24-13 is my score for that one. Giants will go to Arizona. What do you have for that?
Yeah, I think the Giants are going to come back. The Arizona was looking pretty pitiful last week, so I don't see anything changing there. I can see the Giants coming in and just dominating, especially on the floor, on the ground game, just running the ball through Saquon, getting Daniel Jones out of the pocket. It should be a pretty big Darren Waller game just because he is their biggest weapon on the outside, and him being able to get in every single play action set that they have allows for some flexibility, and they'll keep the defense on their toes well, because they'll never know if it's a running or if it's a play action or a run play, and that's the big benefit that they have by having Darren Waller and Saquon being one of their star players on off, two of their star players on offense. So with that being said, I have the Giants winning 25-18.
For me, I also have the Giants. I got them winning 20-9. I don't think Arizona's going to register a touchdown in this game, but I will say I think they actually played decent against Washington. They forced a turnover. I think Joshua Dobbs he kind of held his own, did nothing more than we expected, but didn't do anything worse. So I think given the situation of the Arizona Cardinals right now, it was a solid showing. But yeah, they obviously aren't good enough to really win these sort of games. I think the Giants are just going to bounce back. They have too much talent not to. So I feel like I have every reason to believe 20. I mean, they're going to win this game, but my prediction 20-9. I'm just kind of leaning on my intuition a bit with Arizona not being able to register a touchdown. Maybe they get to, not even the red zone a couple times. Maybe they get to the Giants' side of the field and maybe they can't make it work and they get those field goals. But yeah, the Giants, I got them getting this get back win here. Next one. This is a good one here. We got the Jets. I mean, it was a good one, but we got the Jets going to Dallas.
Yeah, I have a pretty big win for the Cowboys here. I think the Jets defense will come to show out, but I think they'll just be overwhelmed at the end of it. They're running the Tony Pollard. I think will be able to run pretty effectively because the offense will get the defense spread out vertically. So I think this will be a good game. But unlike Josh Allen and the Bills, I think these guys will come in with some poise, knowing that they don't have to do too much to win this game, knowing that all they have to do is score like 25 points in order to win. So with that being said, I have the Cowboys winning this one pretty dominant fashion. I have them winning 21-13. I know that doesn't sound crazy dominant, but it's going to be dominant performance.
I have it, going 27-24. What I liked about the Jets, 27-24 Dallas. But what I liked about the Jets was just they look like a more mature team this year. And obviously when you bring in those guys like Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, Dalvin Cook, makes you a more mature team. So I think they played really well on Monday night, getting that win, of course, and the three interceptions by Whitehead obviously were key to that game. Their defense is going to come to play. I don't think they're going to get anything like 30 put on them or anything like that, even though it is Dallas. I think their offense is going to hold their own. So I think they can get, a tight game here. But the difference is going to be the end of the game. And are they going to be able to drive down the field, in my opinion, and get into field goal position? And I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I think that's where you're going to have to lean on Zach Wilson, and I don't know if he's going to be able to deliver. So I will say, though, that he played all right when Aaron Rodgers went out. I think he held his own. But I think this is too much of a tall task to get this sort of win.
Right.
Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall are probably going to have to be big in this game for them to get it to this point, but I believe that they will. So I'd say 27-24. Dallas squeak it out at the end.
Yeah, I just don't see where they'll have the offense for that, honestly. The defense of the Cowboys is just too suffocating, in my opinion.
No, it is, but I don't know. The weapons, the Garrett Wilsons, the running backs, I just feel like it's a different Jets team than last year, whereas last year they'd get hot and cold. I think this year it might be the same thing, but I feel like they have a little bit more weapons to kind of put together, even in losses, like good performances. So
yeah, okay.
That's just my intuition behind that. We'll see if it's true, but I'm definitely picking Dallas in this game.
Okay.
Next one, we got Washington going to Denver.
Yeah, I think the Broncos came out this week against the Raiders, and even though their offense did improve from last year, I don't think it was the leap that we were looking for. It still looks like they're playing through some of their schematic. I'm trying to understand their schematics a bit. Sean Payne seems to have a decent idea for what he wants Russell Wilson to be like. And there are some throws where we see Russell Wilson stepping back into the pocket, getting his progression, getting through his progressions and lasering a couple of them. So we kind of see what the end product wants to be. It's just not quite there yet. And I think they still have something to prove after their loss. The Broncos playing at home, the Commanders getting that win on the road. I think this is something we have to keep an eye on, but I think the Broncos will win this in considerably decent fashion where their defense will be the strongest point here. I think they'll win 27-17.
For me, I got Denver here. I feel like Denver is showing last week obviously was a loss, but the offensive production and just overall what you're expecting out of them at home, especially, wasn't what you would have thought was going to happen to start the season. I don't know if I'll say I expect a bounce back performance, but I feel like they'll be good enough to get a win here. They're playing Washington, who had their own lapses last week. Sam Howell, he hasn't necessarily arrived yet. He's still kind of going through his own growing pains. So I feel like Denver's defense will be able to capitalize off that. Denver's going to have another opportunity at home. And I think they'll make the most out of it and get this win here. So I say, I don't know if I said my score yet, but 16-13 Denver.
Okay.
Field goal. Yeah, field goal. I don't know who their kicker is right now. I know they lost McManus, but field goal. Next one, we got, let me scroll down here. We got Miami going to New England Sunday Night Football.
This is going to be a good one. I think I talked about the Patriots defense. Even their offense is looking like they've caught it a stride compared to last year. I think they have Bourne on the outside is looking really nice. Seems to have a connection with Mac Jones. Both that running game between Ramondre and Elliott, I think they have something there. Ultimately, especially on the defensive side, of course, on the defensive side, they have a suffocating style of game, very disciplined. Even if the talent is not out, like it's not jumping out at you, the Patriots defense is still very stingy and very well disciplined. So I love the Patriots in this matchup. I think the Dolphins are yet to run into a team where obviously it's only been 1 week, but a team that's really challenging them and being disciplined on the defensive side. So this will be a close game, and I think it will be somewhat of a toss-up on who wins. So I don't really feel completely strong about this, but I do see the Dolphins taking care of business here with the field goal. So in my opinion, I think it's going to end 23-20. Should be a close game. Miami, sorry.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. It could easily go the opposite direction.
Yeah, that's the way I have it. I have it to be 30-29 New England. I think it's going to come down to a field goal, and I think New England is going to win it at the end.
Sure.
Well, like you were saying, they're not just defense focused this year. They feel like a better offensive team as well. I think we're going to see it on full display. Mac Jones having a really good game. Ramondre Stevenson out of the backfield also contributing at a high level. And I think their offense is going to make the plays that are going to take them over the top. And their defense is going to be poised enough to kind of stop those big play threats out of Tua and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously everything to what Miami does. But I still think it's going to be a tight game. I do think it's going to be high scoring. 30-29 is what I got for that.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. I think they're going to show Miami a little something different. I think Miami's going to have to pivot a little bit when they get Tyreek taken away. They'll have to lead it on their running game a little bit more. Slowing down the game is what I'm looking at.
Yeah. Next one, we got one of the Monday Night Football games, New Orleans at Carolina. What do you have for that one?
Yeah, I love the Saints coming into it. I love Derek Carr. I mean, the offense is not actually what I'm raving about. It's the defense. The defense is stingy defense, amazing when it comes to takeaways. So ultimately, I just like how the Saints played week one. I like their defensive packages that they showed. The scheme was really nice. I think it plays complementary to their style of football that they want to play. Derek Carr's one seems like he's already getting some type of chemistry built with his receivers, not just Olave, but the other guy as well. Who's that fast one? Super speedy guy on the outside. I'm blanking on his name. Sorry. But ultimately, huh?
It's Shaheed, right?
Shahid, yep, thank you. And what I'm seeing there is just like a chemistry, a trust that early on in the season that I didn't really expect to see on the offensive side. But ultimately, it's the defensive side that I'm really proud of when it comes to New Orleans. Their defense looks like that stingy New Orleans defense of the 2010s when they had Drew Brees and they were relying on their defense a lot. So ultimately, I like what I'm seeing. The Panthers, ultimately, I'm just not seeing enough out of their offense to make me believe that they'll get over the hump that is the New Orleans defense. So ultimately, I don't think it's going to be a crazy, like, high scoring game by any means, but I do have them winning. I do have the Saints winning 23-15.
For me, I wanted to kind of switch it up for this one. I wanted to not pick the favorites and kind of maybe just, separate myself. If I'm going to win this points competition, I got to be able to kind of be a little bit different outside of the box. So I picked Carolina in this one at home, 17-13. I saw flashes out of Bryce Young that I liked, and other than a few a few good Laviska Chenault's gains here and there, Chuba Hubbard. It wasn't much to really speak of outside of that. So I'm expecting a better performance out of the surrounding cast of the offense to kind of make it easier, and I'm expecting a better performance out of the offensive line that obviously succumbed to all the pressure that the Atlanta Falcons were putting on them, and rightfully so with their defensive front. But better ball security this week. Obviously, learning lesson last week when you go against the top safety, he threw 2 interceptions. Bryce Young did, but I'm expecting better against the Saints defense. I'm expecting some lapses that we would maybe see out of Derek Carr in this game. I'm expecting that to rise. I'm expecting the Carolina Panthers defense to come to play, the J.C. Horns of the world to be there and be ready for these moments. So with the home environment, Bryce Young's first game in that stadium in the regular season, that counts. I just feel like I have reason to believe there that maybe an upset here could happen. So 17-13 Carolina.
Sure. Speaking of upsets, Browns at Steelers, the second Monday doubleheader that we have. I'm super interested to watch this game. I love this AFC East. The division just seems like a fun division to watch and stay at 2-2, or AFC North, pardon me. I think what we can see here is a bounce back game from the Steelers where Mike Tomlin does not like to lose, and I think he'll instill some type of grit that we didn't see against the 49ers come to play in this Browns game. Ultimately, I do think it's going to be a really close game. Division rivals, of course. I think the Browns are favorites, but I have the Steelers winning by 1. I have the Steelers winning 24-23 with the last-minute field goal.
Are you concerned at all with the Week 1 performance with the Steelers? Kenny Pickett maybe not having the best game, or do you feel like that was just a product of what the San Francisco 49ers have?
Yeah, when you blow up a game early like San Francisco was able to do, it makes you kind of abandon your game script early. And whenever you abandon your game script early, especially for a young quarterback in a new system, that can really throw off what you're looking to do. So I'm not gonna glean too much out of that Week 1 performance by the Steelers. I think there was still a lot of grit, especially on the defensive side that they showed, especially on the second half of that game. I expect that to roll over against the Browns. The Steelers are no rookies to playing hard-fought games, and I think this will be something like that where they're going to be running the ball a bunch. It's going to be low scoring, even though 24-21, 24-23 might sound like a lot of points being scored, but I think those will come in bunches. But a majority of the game will be slow in the trenches, one in the trenches.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I could see that happening, but I'm going to go Cleveland 23-6 in this one. I just feel like on both sides of the ball, they're clicking. and I think they're coming into this game with the right sort of energy to feel like we're not satisfied. You know, they've been in this sort of position before where they start off the season hot and they haven't capitalized.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they're kind of building a little bit more maturity in this Stefanski era. Hopefully, getting more out of Deshaun Watson as the season grows. Starting off strong, of course, with that Week 1 win.
Right.
Um, so 23-6 is what I got it. I just don't trust Kenny Pickett enough, and of course, you got the Mike Tomlin history of not, being under 500. I think it is for his whole career there.
Oh.
That could change this year because if they don't get more out of the offense and he doesn't get more of their receiving talent with Freiermuth and Deontay Johnson and the rest, Najee Harris, of course, I think it's going to be a long season, and they're starting to they're going to be able to figure out after this year if Kenny Pickett's their guy. Hopefully he is, but right now I just feel like Deshaun Watson has kind of arrived already, and he's going to be able to be poised enough to kind of lead this team through that game in that hostile environment and get the Browns a win. So 23-6 is how I have it. It might be a little bit there, but I feel like I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers have enough to get a touchdown in this game.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty high on that. You see them losing back to back at home to start off the year? I don't even think that's possible.
I think it's possible.
Okay.
I feel like this is a different Steelers that we're talking about here. This is a team going through a transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they're kind of figuring things out, of course, when you do in a transition. So they're figuring out who their quarterback is. They're figuring out if Najee Harris is the guy, there's some things that he needs to get better at, of course. So there's a lot of things. Obviously got a strong defense, but that's not everything that they can lean their heads on. They've had a strong defense with TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick the last couple of seasons, and where has that gotten them, So it's going to take more out of the offense to really get them over the edge. And I don't know who their offensive coordinator is. I'm going to say, I think it's like Matt Canada, who, the fans aren't really too fond of. But let me confirm. Yeah, Matt Canada. So I feel like the game plan is obviously conservative, Kenny Pickett, but I think they're going to need a little bit more juice to kind of grow and be something better. And that's how you're going to stand out in this very tough division. And I think Cleveland already started off strong with a division win. I think they'll get another one here.
Okay. I think that's a fair point of view.
But bold predictions. What's your bold prediction for this week?
My bold prediction goes into my bold prediction for the year, which is that the Ravens will win the AFC North. I believe that I can't let it out yet. Lamar Jackson will have a total of 350 scrimmage yards plus 4 total touchdowns. I believe I said that the Ravens would win 28 to something. I have Lamar scoring all 4 of those touchdowns.
You have the Ravens winning 28-24. So you have him getting okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think you alluded to this too. You said Lamar would need to have a huge Lamar game. So you're right. I believe that.
Okay. I like that one. A little throwback Lamar, fresh off of that contract. I'd love to see it for sure. For me, obviously I predicted a blowout in the Lions-Seahawks game.
Mm-hmm.
So going along with that, I'm going to say Amon-Ra St. Brown, 150 plus receiving yards, career high, and 3 touchdowns, which I also believe is a career high against the Seahawks in that game.
Damn, slacking.
So I just feel like he's going to have a coming out party this season. I think he's going to kind of turn into that elite receiver that a lot of probably like fantasy heads are probably expecting, but you're going to see it on the NFL level that he's serious. So I think he's going to turn into like a top 10 receiver stamped this year, no doubt about it.
Okay.
And performances like this are going to make him stand out. So 150 plus yards, 3 touchdowns, going along with the big day from Jared Goff, which I predict. So yeah, that's my prediction for bold prediction for this week.
I like it.
But yeah, I was talking about bold predictions last week about, last year we had some predictions last year that weren't bold enough.
Mhm.
So I wanted to set a certain standard this year that made them bold. But I feel like these are bold enough to kind of qualify for that standard. Last year we had some like Josh Allen 3 touchdowns in a game. I'm like, that's not bold. So I want to make sure that these qualify. So
Okay.
so far so good this year. These are bold predictions so far. So yeah, Lamar Jackson for sure. Amon-Ra St. Brown, based off of history, that's bold. He hasn't done it before.
Right. Right. And 350 plus 4 touchdowns. I don't even know when the last time Lamar's done something like that.
Oh, no. 150 yards.
Hmm? No. I said
Lamar Jackson. Okay.
50. Yeah.
Terrible.
He'd break the world. I'd have to trade for him ASAP.
Yeah, we're good. All right. But before we finish here, there were some things I didn't mention going along with these score predictions that I wanted to bring up on some teams. Obviously the Dolphins had a big time performance, against the Chargers. Offensively, just a very high performing game for I think it was Tua Tagovailoa, 466 passing yards, I believe it was.
Wow.
A very good game. And obviously that's a big credit to guys like Tyreek Hill and of course Jalen Waddle.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Dolphins ceiling this year? Like how good can they be and what level can they reach?
Yeah. Great question. And I think their true limitation is Tua Tagovailoa's health. Like honestly, that's the only thing that stops them. Their defense is one that has all-star pedigree as well as the upside to be able to play in competitive games. So I'm really excited to see what happens with them in the playoffs and playoff type environments. But ultimately, health is a factor, and I just don't see Tua Tagovailoa getting through a 17-game season and being there for the playoffs. So ultimately, that's my biggest gripe with this team, and I think that's going to be ultimately the reason why 10 years down the line we're not remembering this team will be because Tua is going to get injured, and we're going to remember this team as, wow, that team that could have done something if their quarterback could stay healthy. And like, I'm not trying to speak that into existence by any means. I want to see Tua perform and excel. It's just I just really don't see it happening. But if that does happen, if they do get 17 games out of Tua and another 4 more in the playoffs, I definitely think this is a Super Bowl contending roster without a doubt. The matchup, that the type of Tyreek on the field is similar to Steph Curry on the court. He brings a different dynamic to the game that spreads your offense out in a way that is just unique to Tyreek Hill. Whether that be shortcuts that he could take for 80 yards or those long routes that he could take for 80-yard touchdowns. So ultimately, I do see the Dolphins having this roster is without a doubt one of the best rosters I've ever seen, one of the best offensive systems I've ever seen. The execution is also up there with what I've ever seen. So definitely a team that could win the Super Bowl if they stay healthy.
Yeah, I agree. This offense is probably one of the best in the league for me. When they have Tua Tagovailoa, he just gets the best out of Jalen Waddle. He gets the best out of Tyreek Hill. So I just think if they have Tua, that is also the difference maker for me. I'd say they'd beat like the Bills even if they had Tua last year in that playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how high I was, on their offensive production. Yeah, so that just puts them at the top of the AFC if they're able to stay healthy. But it's obviously a big if, and you're not speaking any Tua injury into existence, but you want to see him on the field. You want to see him winning with this team because the potential for this team is very much reliant on the health of Tua. And I'm hoping that they can kind of get the best out of him. I'm hoping that they can kind of protect him this year and be aware of all the concussion problems he's had and kind of figure out a plan to make him be protected and not, prone to those sort of, injuries.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really the biggest thing for me because I feel like their ceiling is honestly like AFC Championship, that sort of level this year. I feel like they can have like a Bengals type of jump because how good they are, and their defense comes to play as well. And when you get Jalen Ramsey back, it's going to be a problem. So I'm hoping to see them, kind of grow into their own throughout the regular season. And a strong year from Tua would only, boost my confidence in that regard.
Completely agree. I think we're on the same page exactly, for sure.
Another question I didn't ask. Obviously, the Packers had a strong week 1, against the Bears. what do you think their ceiling is this year? Do you think the Packers are a playoff team? Do you think that week one performance was a product of what the Bears put out? What's your thoughts on the Packers?
A well-rounded team overall, through and through. Just their rosters looking good. They're well-rounded, complementary ball, well coached. Definitely, I think their ceiling is a first-round exit ultimately. But I don't think that's too shabby at all. I think that's a great building block for Jordan Love. And if he continues to get better, I can see this exact same core next year coming in and maybe winning a playoff game. So ultimately, that's about where I have their ceiling is playoff, first-round exit, at most second round exit, and that's still a pretty lofty goal, I think, for them. So go ahead and reach it. I think that's something that we should bank on, not just not like I'm just assuming, but I think that they have a good chance of making that happen this year.
Yeah, I feel like they have enough to be a playoff team for sure. Like
Right.
I picked them as my 7th seed because I feel like they still have that DNA in them to kind of make it work, and I feel like Love's been groomed for this for like I was saying, like a few years now. So I think he won't have any jitters coming into this role this year. I feel like he's ready for it.
Right.
I want to see him kind of grow into the season a little bit more, get a little bit more comfortable, because we did see some struggles last week against Chicago early on.
He's a project. He's still a system quarterback at the end of the day. Like I don't see any like star potential from him quite yet.
Hey man, we shall see. We shall see. I feel
Okay, I think I misspoke. I said I don't see any star potential. I don't see a star in him right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the potential's there for him to be a star one day.
Okay, no, that's fair. I think what you're seeing on tape is he's a simple quarterback, not doing anything flashy. But that if that gets you wins, that gets you wins. So I think he's the right man to kind of take over this new era for the Packers. And as far as them being a playoff team, I feel like they have enough for it this year. They're still coming off of a year last year where they feel like they could have had more, and it came down to the very end and they missed it. And yeah, you lose Aaron Rodgers, but you're losing Aaron Rodgers coming off of one of the worst seasons of his career.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a new energy for this Packers team that I really like, and I think that they're going to be productive this season. There's no way that the Packers are just going to sit down and just Aaron Rodgers left and they're not going to be competitive. I don't see a world where that happens. That's just not what's in them. That's not what they have. So I think they're going to bring it this year, and that's why I think honestly they're a playoff team for me. And there's going to be 3 teams in the NFC North that can make the playoffs this year.
Okay, I like it. I have one topic for you as well. If we're done with this,
Sure.
Do you think the Jets will be able to replace Zach Wilson this season? Mid-season, I should say. Did they even do that? I guess
they could. They could obviously go the Carson Wentz route potentially.
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, call him up, get him back.
Philip Rivers ready to play in that last game for
Rivers, maybe he wants to come back and give one more go. There's some guys out there that you could kind of reach out to. Jacoby Brissett, some good backup quarterbacks that you might want to reach out to. But honestly, I think they're committed. Just like seeing yesterday, I feel like Robert Saleh's committed to Zach Wilson for some reason. I think Nathaniel Hackett, I feel like they kind of had something going. And it seems to me also that Zach Wilson did a lot of work with Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, and it kind of showed a little bit more in that game that, okay, this is something they're going to be committed to if it goes in this direction. So I don't think there's any panic mode yet, but maybe if they lose like a 4-game losing streak going into the trade deadline, maybe that's an option that they want to, look into. But as of right now, there's no reason to really rush it. Right. I know people are kind of speculating that right now already, but I feel like just have faith in Zach Wilson. Maybe this is what he needed to kind of, move his career forward, because it's not been a bright start for him so far. And I think I'm interested to see how he responds to what's been going on in his career. Obviously had some post-game press conference moments last year that, maybe lacked accountability a little bit, and people didn't like that either. Mm-hmm. So I think he's maturing. Obviously, you see his recent press conference and seeing the accountability, the leadership that he's taking, and you can respect it, and you can kind of see that he's growing a little bit. So I want to see them committed to this approach of taking Zach Wilson seriously and him being their starter for the foreseeable future. If all goes bad, you have the trade deadline in however many weeks till week 8 or something. So you can look into a trade or a free agency then. But Right now, I just feel like Zach Wilson's the right way to go, believe it or not.
Yeah, I disagree. I think Zach Wilson is a waste of a year if they continue to bank on him. I think I've seen enough that I'm completely out on him. I don't think he can make his reads. I don't think he can make some of the all of the throws that you want him to make. Ultimately, he's a good backup. I don't see him ever being a starter in this league, so I'm kind of out on him. And I think Salah being in on him doesn't make sense to me. It's kind of this team Monday night looked exactly like this team that I saw last year. Some days they're going to win, but they're really relying on the opposing quarterback, the opposing team to make mistakes. Without those mistakes being made, they don't win that game, and they don't win many games without mistakes from the opposite team. So they're looking for teams who can beat themselves, a team that's poised like a Patriots or even a Packers. They're not losing to those type of teams, or they're not beating those type of teams, and I think that's an issue. And if that doesn't get resolved early, I think it's going to be too late by the trade deadline. Even if they do integrate a new quarterback, I mean, even if they do grab a new quarterback, it's going to be too late to integrate them. We're going to see issues with that. Obviously, integration issues are going to be a thing no matter what, but that's why I think it's better to pull the trigger earlier than later. And I think they could be talking about we're all in on Wilson to kind of give themselves more leverage in trade negotiations or whatever it may be, to make it seem like, hey, if we can acquire that guy, we're okay with rocking out with our guy. But I don't necessarily think they believe that, and that if they did believe that, they wouldn't have went through all the trouble to get Aaron Rodgers, give up a first round pick that they ultimately will be able to keep. So I think they need to get rid of him quickly. If I don't know, a team like the Vikings, they go have a rough 0-4 start, maybe Kirk Cousins on expiring deals up for a trade, things like that. It's just I don't necessarily think that will happen. It's just like things like that I can see breaking in that certain way that players might become available. I say you go after those guys. Carson Wentz even is the guy that you might be intrigued in. But ultimately, if they don't make a trade or a move for one of a guy that they really trust, I think this year will be going to waste. They don't have years to waste. They're going to have to pay some of their younger guys here coming up soon. They're going to have to move quickly. This window is not going to stay open forever. I do think they have a championship window if they have the right quarterback.
Mm. Great points made there. I mean, I respect that you may want to have more of a sense of urgency. I just feel like right now they're a good enough team to win games as long as their quarterback doesn't make mistakes and takes them out of games. A la Josh Allen, you know what I'm saying? So
I don't even think he can make the throws to win them like games that are right there.
I feel like he can be a game manager and they can win games. If he puts it on him and makes those mistakes, then that's just that's a wrap for him in a New York Jet jersey.
Right.
But I feel like unless he's if he's like playing like yesterday, like being a game manager, not trying to make those wild throws, because we kind of saw that was in his DNA coming in to the league, is like those wild type of throws, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like yesterday he wasn't really doing anything like that. He was leaning on what worked, which was the run game. And when that was kind of getting realized, he made other reads. So as long as he's kind of like doing what the game is giving to him, then I feel like he can kind of find success. You don't need that quarterback that's going to do that. Maybe a Carson Wentz is going to be the one that's going to kind of make his imprint on the game a little bit more than a Zach Wilson. You kind of need to be able to capitalize off of your weapons and providing to your team what the defense is asking of you.
Yeah, I just don't even think he can be like a Teddy Bridgewater. Like that's my issue, Zach Wilson. Like at least the Teddy Bridgewater gives you those things that you're talking about, where he's not trying to do too much and put his imprint on the game, like you said. But he is also like at least a valid game facilitator. I just don't think he can make those throws. Like Zach Wilson just can't make those. Even that throw to Garrett Wilson 1-on-1, like it was a bad throw. Like
yeah.
I don't know. It gives me a bad omen for what's going on. I think they need to show their guys that we care and we want to put someone around you guys, even if it's a swing and a miss on a new quarterback. I think that swing just has to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't want to see them make any sudden moves that's going to cost them either. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't be too reactionary at the same time.
Sure.
And I highly doubt that they're looking at a quarterback right now. I don't know why, but I just have a doubt in my mind that like they're probably not looking at quarterbacks right now that they're immediately trying to bring in. This is not like when Teddy Bridgewater tore his whatever,
Yeah.
and and they were just like, "Oh my God, we don't have Teddy Bridgewater. We need to trade for Sam Bradford right now."
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that. It's more like, okay, we have Zach Wilson, a guy who knows the system.
Sure.
Let's rock with him for a little bit. If he lets us down, we know. So let's change it up. But I know, as you said that you said that the season might be lost by that point, and I feel like the Jets won't risk that happening either. I feel like they won't elongate the process. They're just gonna give Zach Wilson a chance.
Yeah, I still think that I agree with you that they actually have faith in him that he'll perform better than he did last year. He had an offseason with Aaron Rodgers. He still has Aaron Rodgers in his ear, all that good stuff. But ultimately, I think they know the writing is on the wall. So they'll be doing their due diligence. That's my thing. I think they'll give him some type of leash to play on. But in the background, I would be at shock if they didn't do their due diligence and look around, ask around.
Yeah, I'm sure they're aware of like looking around and everything. I mean, like they got Aaron Rodgers, so obviously Zach Wilson's not their guy.
Exactly.
I just think that they're comfortable sticking with a guy who knows the system a little bit, and I think they're going to game plan the way that can get the most out of him while not making those same mistakes. But I mean, you look at Carson Wentz last year, like maybe you don't want to go with that. Like he lost his job, So I mean, you just got to go with what works best for your team. And there are some more attractive names out there, but you also got to be smart about whether they'll fit with this system.
Yeah, I mean, I have a crazy idea that the Vikings, if we lose a lot of games here consecutively, Kirk Cousins might be available for trade. It's kind of if we don't have long-term plans with him, if we want to pitch JJ onto something, hey, let's pitch him on a rookie deal contract with Caleb Williams, wink wink. It's just like the other teams are also on a crossroads. It's not just the Jets. I think they could win with the Jimmy Garoppolo level quarterback. They could have waited and signed Derek Carr. I think all of these are moves that could have happened in the offseason. They didn't happen, but that's the caliber of quarterback I think that can take him over the top. It's not anything like I'm not saying they should try to make a big deal for a Lamar, like even a Geno Smith. Like it's just they need that game manager. I'll take a game manager. I just don't think Wilson is even there.
But I mean, they got Aaron Rodgers, so like that's better than all those other options like Derek Carr and Garoppolo. So it's like, why would they go after somebody like that starter quality at this point? They probably want to go after somebody who's fine with being a backup or like an upper echelon backup in the league, maybe like a Jacoby Brissett, somebody like that, rather than somebody who's kind of like a Kirk Cousins. Like, what you're gonna do when Kirk Cousins is maybe playing well and then Aaron Rodgers comes back? That's a weird situation.
Aaron Rodgers is not coming back. He's 40 years old with the worst injury that he had.
You think his career is done? Like it's over?
I genuinely think that we might have seen the last of Aaron Rodgers. And it's not something that I think he could come back. It's just, what is he going to be when he gets back? He's going to be coming off a torn Achilles that takes a legitimate year to recover from, let alone for a 40-year-old guy. I think he's out. I think he's gone. I don't think you need to worry yourself with what happens when Aaron Rodgers comes back. Nah.
So you think the Jets should be trying to find their franchise quarterback right now?
Yes, I do think they still need to be. If they're serious about this window, unless they want to, what are they going to do? I mean, we knew Aaron Rodgers at max had a 3-year window. In reality, more like 1.5, and that 1.5 is already out the window with this injury. So it's just like, what are we really waiting on for Aaron Rodgers? You know what I'm saying? Like, so ultimately, I think they need to. They shot their shot. A mishap happened, and Aaron Rodgers got injured. It's time to move on. These NFL windows are short. They're not long. If you don't make another move quickly, the Jets can be in another 10, 20 years of purgatory, which I know they don't want, and I think the fans are on them too. So I do think they're doing their due diligence and looking for a quarterback. Will the right one come into their lap?
Okay, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I like that conversation right there. Is there anything else that we want to talk about?
No, nothing off the top of my head. Those were good conversations. I'm glad we had a couple of the ones at the very end.
Okay. I probably have one. No, I might have two final ones.
Okay, let's go for it.
First one, is Deshaun Watson back? I know you kind of said, nah, he hasn't been playing like the same Deshaun Watson that we saw in the past when we were comparing him to
Right.
Mahomes, everything. But do you see the signs right now that Deshaun Watson is like we're seeing the best out of him coming?
Yes, I still think there's more to come. I think the season in this season he could get back into looking like maybe 90% of what he was beforehand. I
That's
think to recapture that again will be very, very difficult. But I do think it's possible. I think it's possible to at least recreate 90% of what he was this season. But I just don't think it's there quite yet. But I think that's more so like chemistry and scheme. Like he's still getting used to all that stuff. While ultimately, he just needs to get those repetitions in. I think once you see those reps coming in by week 6, week 7, I think he will look 80, 85 to 90% of what he used to look like. So I do think it's very much possible. Like this game one made me a believer that we will see Deshaun Watson at his peak again. But I don't. Maybe it takes until the end of this year, playoffs, and then a devastating loss, and then come back next year as a different animal. It could be that type of vibe. But I don't think he's there based off game one yet.
I feel like another thing that might like limit those explosive sort of stats that you may have been familiar with in Houston
Mm-hmm.
is like the fact that he has so many other like good weapons around him right now. He has the Nick Chubbs, the Donovan Peoples-Jones, Amari Coopers, Elijah Moores, David Njoku's. So I feel like he's kind of spreading the ball around and being not so much conservative, but being smart with the ball.
Sure, yeah. There's no need for that big ball risk that he needed to do in Houston because they just didn't have enough, right? And their defense is also immaculate.
Right.
Okay.
So I feel like he's giving what the defense is giving him.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So I feel like
my issue with the arm talent itself, though, the arm talent is not there. He's not making those precision passes. There's too many balls hitting the ground when the receiver's open and he has a direct line of sight to them. It's those little things that I just like. He wasn't making those mistakes earlier, and that's why I keep like emphasizing it's just about reps, because I think once he gets those reps in that high speed NFL game that he's used to, I think he'll get right back to it. Ultimately, what I'm really happy about seeing is his ability to evade in the pocket was something that we used to rave about. I saw that completely showcased last year. His ability to scramble outside of the play and recreate for himself and others. I saw that already in game one. So it really is just that arm talent, that precision passing that I'm still looking for.
So you would say it's a matter of time, basically.
It's a matter of repetitions. As long as he stays healthy and stays in this system, he'll be fine. I think he'll be fine. But I'm completely in. I don't think the Cowboys. I mean, I don't think the Cleveland Browns did some disgusting move by paying him all that much money. That's what you have to do for your guy. If you want your guy, and they believed in him, they got him. They're seeing it through, and I think they're slowly reaping the rewards of that. What do you think? I don't think I've gotten your complete take. I keep sorry.
So I was just saying, I think I also think it's a matter of time to a degree. I don't think he's going to get those big time yardage performances that we used to see when he was putting the Houston Texans on his back.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, obviously, there's no need to. I just think with the accuracy, there was obviously a very like that the interception that he threw is concerning. I know.
Mm-hmm.
I think I heard like something about he was throwing like into the wind and whatever that may have made the throw like look really bad on TV, but it was just like certain things like that, decision making, poise. I mean, just things that he's had that is certainly going to come to him as time goes on. So I have confidence that I'd say he's back, because I think these are things that are just going to come with a matter of time, a matter of repetition. Matter of chemistry with these other receivers, and in the offense, of course, with Stefanski, offensive-minded guy, I think is only to grow. Yeah,
I completely agree. I think his confidence coming back too. I think that was looming over him. Still is slightly. People talking sideways about him, and that affects you ultimately, right?
Exactly. Like you saw that smile a little bit more in that game.
That flex.
So I don't know, man. Like I feel like I don't know. Like I don't want to be like ignore all the other stuff with Deshaun Watson in his past and everything like that. But like I get a little excited when I see like him smiling and doing these things that we kind of grew used to when he was at his best. Because I feel like there's still a player in there. It just you can't really perform at your peak like levels when you got those more serious matters going on in your personal life. You need to take care of those.
Right. Yep, that's exactly true. I think that's why next year might be the ideal him again because
Okay.
it gives him the time to really put that stuff under the rug and show people that he's improved as a human being. And when that happens, people will start treating him better. The media will start treating him nicer, and ultimately that boosts his confidence. And that might be it. You know,
That could very well be it. And then
he
last thing,
he definitely seems like one of those type of guys where like if momentum and like praise is on his side, he actually performs even higher. You know what I'm saying?
like validation sort of thing.
Validate like if when he's in the light, he plays better in the limelight. You know,
Okay.
and that type. He was always that type of player to me. He was a clutch player. He was not someone who shrunk under the lights. But right now, when the lights are a little negative, he's kind of showing. You know, like he's being a little reserved, hesitating, double thinking. All of that stuff that doesn't play to his strengths. And once that snowball starts rolling, that outside feedback, that encouragement starts going, I think that will snowball into him getting that confidence back and really slinging it and throwing it with himself behind it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, Last one that I have personally. If anything else comes to mind, let me know. But last one I got is after that week one performance, are the Rams back?
I definitely, yeah, you hit it on the head with that first one. I think they're back. Ultimately, this was a tone-setting game, and they're not back. Let me chill. They're not back because back would insinuate they're back in playoff contention, Super Bowl contention. I don't think they're in Super Bowl contention by any means. Uh,
Uh, I mean, like, okay, are they back as like a force in the NFC?
Even a force in the NFC is a bit of a stretch. I think they're back as a competent team, a team that's like you can't just scratch off like we were originally thinking. Coming into the season, we're looking at them like who, like the Texans of last year or something. You know, a team that you don't really like have to prepare for. Worst defense in the league. They're being touted as, and their ability to come in and make a statement is something that I think will like send vibrations throughout their whole season and completely change the trajectory of their season. So I don't think they're back, quote unquote, but I definitely think they're back on track.
Hmm. Okay,
Hmm.
that's a good way to put it. I feel like they could be a playoff team this year, and I think like what they showed last week is that they're capable of beating good teams if we still believe the Seahawks are a good team.
Hmm.
So I'm interested to see how they play against teams like the 49ers, who I believe that they're playing this week. So that's going to be a test for sure, um, in terms of whether or not they're back. But I mean, when you look at their rise to like Super Bowl status, I mean, started off as like playoff team going to you know Super Bowl after that. So I mean, it's obviously not like just 1 year and everything is fixed.
Right.
But I think are they back in terms of they're kind of got their mojo back a little bit. They're kind of growing back, getting their identity back a little bit. From what I
Hmm.
saw in week one, I mean, they're kind of growing into that a little bit that, like I said earlier, they don't have Cooper Cup and, maybe not a lot of reason to believe after last year's disappointing season. But I think that they're getting their confidence back and you don't just drop 30 points on a team like the Seahawks without actually, being
Having
a team that's changed.
right. Okay.
They have a different groove to them this year. Just what I saw out of that game, they don't have the headline names anymore that you would have remembered, like on defense more so. But they still have something to them that I think McVay instilled in that team from day one. So slowly seeing signs out of that yet, but are they back? I'll hold my role on that too. I don't know if they're back, but I think that they're slowly ascending to what we once knew them to be.
Mhm. I think they last year they definitely like losing all those first round picks took a toll on them, like we would expect. But now, like you said, they're getting their mojo back. They're getting their identity back. It's a matter of time before they regroup and become a force again. I think it will take a little bit of a overhaul on the defensive side as they start aging out, but that is to be expected. You know, that's what happens when windows close. They open back up sooner or later, and good coaches have a way of good organizations and good coaches have a way of reopening windows once they're already closed.
Definitely. But that's everything I had. Do you have anything else to add?
Nah, great conversation today, man.
Great conversation today. Week two of the NFL points competition. Just to recap everybody on the score right now, Zach is leading with 30 points, getting 10 correct winners predicted, and behind him, tied at 27, two-way tie is Christian and Connor. So me and Yossef are gonna have a crack at it this week, see what we can do, try to get matched up with them a little bit. Hopefully, we hit on some scores, some bold predictions, get a little bit tighter in this race. But great conversation, like you said today. Glad we had this talk. That's everything for episode 59 of the Finale podcast. Yossef, I'll see you in a few weeks from now. Thank you again for coming on. It's always a good conversation, always a good time to have you on. So thank you again, and we'll see everybody next time. Peace.